Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. Tonight is episode 225. It is June 22nd, and we've got some special guests. I just got alerted that we went live. That's good that it's actually working. That's neat. But yeah, episode 225, we've got a special guest. We've got some cool stuff going on, and we'll get into that just momentarily. But tonight we have from our sponsor, we are reviewing in part one from Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio, the Nub Habano. And this is a cigar that's been around for a while. We're going to talk about that. But Nub Habano from Oliva Cigars, and also Altadis USA for our second cigar of the week. We've got the Montecristo Espada Oscuro, and that is something that I think we've reviewed on the show before.
Yeah, we actually had that.
A lot of the Espada series.
We had that as the featured cigar when it first debuted.
Okay.
And then we've had it as the second cigar multiple times.
Yeah, fantastic cigar. So we're going to get into that in part two. Part two's topic tonight is ATF Lifestyle. We're going to get into the reason why we're talking about ATF Lifestyle momentarily. But until then, I also want to thank the BS Cigar Company. The gold and silver are now available. The Montecristo Espada Oscuro is made by Plasencia, which the BS Gold is also made by Plasencia, and the silver is made by Espinosa, who we've had on the show before, Eric Espinosa. So check those out as well. You can find those at Tinderbox at Easton, or you can contact the BS Cigar Company, and they can get them to you as well. So thank you to our sponsors. I want to thank you guys. We are wearing some of the shirts that buyjack.com/bourbon and BS. I've got the black and gray. He has the charity pink, no longer available, but it is available in other colors as well. Also, maybe not the best for 90-degree weather, but the 3/4 sleeve Raglans for the BS Cigar Company. We've got some hoodies on there as well for those that aren't in the Midwest or where our guest is tonight. But check that out, buyjack.com/bourbon and BS for shirts. Last but not least, thanks to the Patreon members, patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast, or Venmo at Bourbon and BS. That's a way you guys can send us some funds to pick up a bottle. If you can't get it to us in the mail, that's an easy way to do it. So we appreciate that very, very much, and the continued support from everyone else. Now that we cover the business there, I do want to bring on Patrick Adams. Patrick is a friend of mine from years past. He moved back across country and is now in California. Where are you at right now?
Sorry, in sunny Orange County, California. So south of Los Angeles, north of San Diego, about 10 miles from the beach. Right
Sounds
in the middle
rough.
of liberal and earthquake country. But it's a good place to visit. Good place to visit.
We'll talk about that a bit more in part two, I think. But Patrick, we've known each other. We kind of discussed this. What was it? 10 years?
Oh, probably more than that, buddy.
Probably more, 10 to 15. Let's ballpark it without overthinking it. Probably 10 to 15 years we've known each other. He used to live here for a few years in Columbus, Ohio. That's how we got to know each other through the cigar community. Moved back west to Southern Cali, and he has now pursued a passion that was built off of other passions all combined, and that is ATF Lifestyle. That's the brand, right? Lifestyle. The magazine's the product, but you have other products as well.
Well, yeah, we're in the business of media and publishing. We do it for a lot of different industries. So primarily what's called B2B publications and media. So if you're in a particular industry, such as first responders. So that's one of the big industries that we serve. So all four branches of military, police, fire, TSA, Border Patrol. So if you're in that trade of line of work, you would receive publications from us, journals, newsletters, websites, e-newsletters, things like that cover things like policy and procedure, legal findings, equipment, training, education, all things that help people do better in their line of work.
Yeah.
But along with that, we've amassed a very big, great audience of service-minded individuals that work kind of in backbone infrastructure industries across America. We kind of joke that if any segment of our audience decided not to come to work for a week, the country would shut down. and we're really proud to serve them. But what we didn't have is anything that served them once they got home, took the uniform off, kicked the boots off. And a lot of these people have the same passions in their life that I do: hunting and fishing and red, white, and blue, and smoking and drinking and shooting. And so I figured let's put together something for them once they kick those boots off, and kind of lighten the load a little bit and remind them why it's great to live in a free country.
Absolutely. Love hearing that. And we're going to get into that more in part 2. You're kind of familiar with the format, Patrick, but for those that aren't, first part, we go over a cigar, which again is the Nub Habano. That's what we're smoking. We're going to talk about that a bit and then also review it. And then you were kind enough to send us something. Never heard of it ourselves, right? You have not?
No.
Yellow Rose Distilling, and this is the Outlaw Bourbon whiskey coming out of Texas. So we're going to talk about that as well. So let's start with the whiskey. So Patrick, why did we get this bottle from you? Like what is the significance of this to you, or how did you come across it?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story. I've got a good buddy. I mean, very similar, to how I found you and why we became friends. So as much as I call you kind of the professor of cigars, and you've turned me on to countless great cigars over the years. I've got a buddy named Brandon who works in the liquor industry, works for a very large distributor. And every time I see him, he kind of brings me, we try out something that I haven't tried before. And, one day he brought Yellow Rose, and I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I love it. Where can I get it? And unlike you, most of the time his answer is, well, you can't get it anywhere, unless you're in Texas. In this case. So
that's not very helpful, but yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I finished that bottle. I was out of luck, kept looking around, kept pursuing Yellow Rose, kept trying to find, I was considering it, a driving trip to Texas to bootleg back a case. And nice. I then fast forward about 6 months later, I'm on a layover in DFW, missed my flight, was getting rescheduled on another flight to make my way back home to see the family. And I see this gentleman wearing a polo shirt that had Yellow Rose logo on it.
Nice.
And so I walk up to him. I said, boy, that's a fantastic whiskey. I wish I could find it in California. And he just lit up. Nicest guy you'd ever meet. Turns out he's the CEO of Yellow Rose.
No way.
No way. Seriously. And so I'm just like, what the hell? Like, dude, you've got to open up distribution. And told me the whole story behind Yellow Rose, which is an amazing story. And to make the long story endless, they are slowly opening up distribution outside of Texas, and it is more available than it was when I was first introduced to it. But it's just a great group of guys down there, just outside Houston, Texas, working in an old, the facility's been a distillery. They say that it was the first legal distillery following Prohibition in Texas. In Texas, yeah.
Yeah, based out of Houston. This one is going to be 46%, so 92 proof. They've got some, nice touches to this bottle as far as the marketing side of it. I mean, obviously, you notice the shirt, so it's distinctive, obviously, with the name Yellow Rose. For those that are Crowned Heads fans in the cigar world, you talked to John Huber, I believe, on one of your earlier podcasts. I don't know if it's aired yet or not.
It is. Yeah, it's available up on the website.
Okay. And John Huber's the head of Crowned Heads, and they have a cigar, if you're not familiar, Patrick, that it's called Yellow Rose, and it's only...
I think the writing from this and that cigar is almost identical, too.
Could be.
So it might have been a collaboration.
Could have been a collaboration, or it could be a similar story, right? With the I forget the lady's name. We were trying to watch the video earlier, but named after, is it Emma? Mm-hmm. Do you know that story?
I don't.
So it's on their website there, but I believe so. Yellow Rose was the nickname of a historic figure there, and that's where it came from. But anyways, I digress there. Love the marketing. The top, starting with the top there, you've got a almost like a pewter looking coin on the top of the cork there, which is really cool. And I'm not going to be able to probably, unless you might be able to get closer than we are, Patrick.
Yeah. How's that look? Hang on.
That looks a lot better than.
Yeah, let me blow you up here real quick if I can from this screen. Yeah, here you go. Yeah, so there's the cork top even, and then you do have a full real cork. It looks
synthetic.
Is it synthetic?
Synthetic cork.
It's a nice synthetic cork there. And then you go down to a kind of a leather looking type of a neck top.
Yeah, neck cover.
Yeah. Sure.
Neck sleeve.
And inspired by legend on one side, Yellow Rose Distilling, beautiful there as well. And then you go down towards the bottle there. I like the shape of the bottle. The sticker on there is the Outlaw Bourbon side, and that's on the bottom half. And then it's kind of got the decal printed on there. Looks like of the crafted in Texas Yellow Rose Distilling. So pretty cool there. One interesting thing here. There's a couple. Thank you for doing that, Vanna. Couple of cool things. What's interesting about this, for those that don't know about this, they have several products, but with this one, they talk about it being outlaw bourbon, and they are doing things where they break the traditional bourbon laws. Now, it's interesting that they say that because they are doing exactly that. It's 100% corn, which that technically follows suit.
Yes.
51% or more.
Well, and it's 100% Texas corn.
Texas yellow corn, because there's another big kind of Texas brand that uses blue corn in one of theirs. So I like the fact that they distinguish that it's the yellow corn. And this is something that it sounds like from our research that it's done in smaller barrels, not your traditional 53-gallon barrels, smaller barrels. And being down there, they talk about 15 to 20 degree swings in temperature in Houston. And therefore, their angel share being hotter all the time is going to be, what they say, 15%?
Yeah, 15%, which in Kentucky, typically an angel share is going to be around 3%.
Yeah. So very different in a lot of ways. But again, 100% yellow corn from, I believe, Houston or Texas at least. And it's going to be aged in special small American oak barrels is what they say.
Which it's okay if it's aged in smaller barrels, as long as it's virgin American white oak barrels, it would still qualify.
Correct. But it's cool. We're looking at it, and again, not knowing this, we were kind of talking about this. It's whiskey, and right above it says Outlaw Bourbon. So I think the Outlaw Bourbon is the name, if you will, and it's not technically a bourbon, but it is a whiskey.
Because because on the back it says aged at least 1 year. It's got to be aged at least 2 years.
Yeah.
In order for it to actually be a bourbon.
So that's the synopsis of what we were able to research on it. And they do have, you mentioned, what was it, the American?
Yeah, so they've got 3 others, and you know, they're all a little bit different in character. Kind of their mainstream is called the Premium American Whiskey, and it's a blend of 4 whiskeys: Canadian bourbon, light and fresh whiskey. And it's only 80 proof, so it's, you know, it's pretty easy drinking. It's one of those, if you're going to have an all-nighter, that's probably the one that you want to go to. They have the rye whiskey, which is a blend of 2 and 3 year rye whiskeys. That's 90 proof. Then
that was, I think, a 95% mash bill there, I believe. Go ahead, sorry.
No worries. And then they have the Harris County Straight Bourbon Whiskey, and that's a classic high rye mash, 65% corn, 25% rye, 10% malted barley, grown and malted in Texas, double pot distilled, barrel aged, 92 proof.
So they've got a nice portfolio, and I believe, do you have, I should have written this down, but I think it was around 2014 that they fired up. Is that correct?
Yeah, they started in 2012.
2012.
And then last year actually won, let's see, they won Best in Class from American Distilling Institute for what we're drinking tonight. And then they're also awarded a double gold medal at last year's San Francisco World Spirits Competition for the same thing that we're drinking tonight.
So that's some nice merits there. Obviously, that's great to see.
Well, it's getting to be obviously a huge field of competition. So anybody
Absolutely.
that singles themselves out is doing something right.
Absolutely. So, Pat, what do you think of this? I mean, obviously, you mentioned already, and how are you drinking it tonight?
So I've got a few rocks in there.
Okay.
I like to, kind of let it open up a little bit. With scotches, I prefer to kind of start neat, and then depending on how deep into the night, I'll throw a rock or a big ball in there. With most high proof whiskeys, I like a couple rocks in there just to open it up and kind of smooth it out a little bit. Especially when you're starting at 4:30 in the afternoon over here on the West Coast.
Starting early where you're at.
Well, hey, it's happy hour somewhere all the time, right?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. I think you would have done this if we would have said, "Hey, we're going to do it at like 10 o'clock a.m. our time." You're like, "All right, game, let's do it." We're doing a weekday, weekend. I mean, it doesn't really matter. I just need to know what to plan for the rest of my day.
Roger that. Give me the time.
So, Nate, what do you think of this?
So when we were looking it up, the things that we found about it, the things that are on the bottle, this is not at all what I was expecting. I like this. Let me say, this exceeded my expectations.
Right, that's a much nicer way to say whatever you're trying to say.
It exceeded my expectations because when Steve read off, it was 100% Texas yellow corn, no rye in the mash bill whatsoever. Like I thought it was going to be kind of like Steve talks about that corn water.
Corn water, yeah.
Now I did remember back, almost 2 years ago now, we did have another whiskey that was made in Texas, and that was only a 2-year, but we discovered because Texas has such wide range of temperatures throughout the year that stuff in Texas will age a little bit faster than it will in Kentucky. Just like Kentucky bourbon ages a little faster than Scotch because their climate's a little bit more temperate all year round. But I was still a little nervous when I was like, oh, it's only aged 1 year. Like I was expecting something really sharp and bitey, and it's not. On the nose, I get a little bit of floral, but I get a lot of char on the nose on this one. Which makes me think it's probably a pretty heavy.
That like you're talking like
the char, like
the actual char.
The actual char from burnt. I mean, well, think about it. If this is aged only 1 year, but yet look at the color.
Correct.
Like it has a lot of color to pull out of a barrel in 1 to 2 years.
Correct.
So I get a lot of that on the nose, and then as I drink this, it does develop some more sweetness, more of those traditional caramel notes. But the other surprising thing with it being at least 1 year, there's really not much of a burn at all.
No,
like the finish is pretty smooth on this. Sean's over Sean's in the corner of the garage dying after his first sip. Pussy.
It does have a bit. I mean, when I first take a sip of it, the first one, it was, to your point, Sean, in the audience, maybe a little bit of a bite, like a little bit of. I don't get the burn as much. You say smooth. I mean, it does have a little bit of a bite. And I don't know if that's breaking the rules. So you have the smaller barrels, you have the younger whiskey, you have all of that stuff. You're going 100% on a mash bill. I mean, you aren't doing. If you pick this up and you're like, I assume this is going to taste like a typical like Kentucky bourbon that I'm looking for. You obviously didn't read anything or didn't pay attention to anything that I just said. Like if I sell it to you, like, hey, yeah, so it's all Texas corn, smaller barrels, 1 year, and it's only 15, 20 degree swings in that year or so. And like, cool. So it's going to be like limestone. It's going to be, like a nice Kentucky hug. It's going to be what I expect from like, a Buffalo Trace. And you're like, Get the fuck out of here.
I was like,
Graham.
honestly, from when we were looking this up and hearing the story and reading, what we could find on it, I was almost expecting something more corn heavy than like Heaven Hill's mellow corn.
So that's the thing, though. I think it does have that, especially as I got through the first like smaller pour in my Glencairn. I got more corn on the aftertaste or on the finish, if you will. Like it does have that, but it's not the sweet corn.
Correct.
It's dumb as this sounds. It's like corn. I mean, I get that where like a lot of like when I say like corn water on some of these other ones that are done either here in Ohio or Kentucky or elsewhere, I'm getting more of like this like sweetness, like not corn syrup, but it's got that like kind of like that more tart sweetness in it. This doesn't have that. It has more of a kind of a, again, it's thinking out loud, so bear with me. I'm not that smart. It's got like this like a medium, like just straight like corn that you eat more than you know what I mean? It's got that, I guess, more in the finish as I'm drinking it. It's not as much that, but
I also think it's got a nice viscosity to it. Like it right up front,
very oily.
Right up front, it comes across very thick and oily. And any burn that's there for me, like it's all just in the mouth or the back of the throat. Like
we should probably rinse this sometime, by the way. It tastes like my garage.
They can't hear you, Sean.
Yeah, you need to get in the microphone there, bud. It's not your first time in the garage.
No, I think it's one of the reasons why I liked it so much. My first experience was with the premium American whiskey, which, like I said, is only 80 proof, and I didn't expect very much out of it. I mean, most low proof whiskeys like that, they're everyday top shelf whiskeys, and not to say like an Angel's Envy or something is top shelf, but they're just they're boring drinking whiskeys. There's nothing real exciting or unique about them, at least in my opinion, right?
Sippers, but yeah, it's just like you're drinking it, like you said.
Night. like if I have to sit there all night and I know I'm going to drink 20 glasses of whiskey or something and not die, it's going to be something like that. But even at 80 proof, there was some unique character to it that made it stand out as interesting. And so as I moved through the line and found this one, kind of like you, that first punch, right? Like if you haven't drank anything for the day and you take that first sip, anything, I would say anything that's in the 90s and above is, probably going to kick you a little bit with that first sip. And this combined, the higher proof plus the, in my opinion, extremely heavy oak, that kicks you right out of the gate. It's kind of like, whoa. But, as you said, that kind of nice viscosity. And then, to me, it kind of finishes, maybe even a little spicy. It's kind of a nice balance. And after that first drink, even if you're drinking it neat, the experience is a lot smoother than I would have expected.
Yeah, that's like, it's an 8 point. Sean, what do you have? You hit him up.
Yeah, the first few sips were a little bit stronger than the more I started drinking it. Yeah, the first one like really hit me pretty hard. I definitely got a pretty good hug, but now as like I'm drinking it more, it's definitely gone away, and it's a lot smoother on the front, maybe a little bit on the back, but not. I'm starting to get what Nate's getting, so it's it's getting better as I keep drinking it. So
as most whiskeys do.
Yeah. If you drink enough Thunderbird, it does that too.
They can't taste anything.
The drunker I get, the better it tastes.
Yeah, just burn that palate out and you'll be fine.
That's it. I like it. Again, this is interesting. I'm not just trying to be nice about this, where sometimes people will be like, "Oh yeah, you don't say bad things about a lot of these whiskeys or cigars." I think it is not what I expected necessarily, but I'm not surprised as much by it because of what we talked about. This is not going to be your traditional, going back to what I said earlier, is that if you think it's going to be your traditional Kentucky bourbon, then you're not reading the label. Like if I was doing a blind taste test and I'm like, all right, what do you think? You might sip on this after you had a couple of like Kentucky bourbons that are more of the traditional style ones. you're like, what the fuck was that? Like that doesn't
Yeah.
belong with these other three, A, B, C, and then what the hell is D? it is different. This is a different whiskey. This is not.
What
Well,
about
If I have any critique, if you don't know the story, if you don't look it up and it says Outlaw Bourbon Whiskey, and then you start seeing the things like, and you are, say, like a bourbon person, a lot of these people on some of the pages that watch these, these reviews and such on part one, they're bourbon people. So it's like they would see this and like, aged 1 year from Texas, 100% corn. Like, that's not bourbon. And then they just have the principle, like their principles are just broken at that point. But that's the idea of this whole thing of being outlaw bourbon whiskey. Whiskey's
Right.
like the afterthought of it, and you look into it, and that's their whole story, is that we did this bottle, this product, as something that is not going to be your traditional whiskey or traditional bourbon. Excuse me.
This is one of those that I wish I could have had a bottle of it and done the Saturday blind pours at the shop with you, and just and get your reaction knowing nothing about it. Because I mean, you say it's different, but yet there's so much about this whiskey that does, have some of those traditional Kentucky bourbon notes. Like, it does have that oak, it does have that sweetness, that caramel sweetness on it. Sometimes that char. There's a lot of bourbons out there that'll have that char note to it. 92 proof. There's a lot of bourbons out there that are in that ballpark as well.
Right.
So there's a lot. Like, I get that they're doing something very different than what they do in Kentucky and the rest of the country, but yet the flavor profile is still a little bit in line with what you will taste from bourbons all over the place.
On a heavy corn, yes. I can see what you're saying there. Have you added any water to it?
I have not.
It gets that. So I don't know how it is on ice, Pat, but with the neat on the first glass and on the second glass, I put probably 3 drops of water in there.
Yeah.
That opened it up, and I'm not gonna say in a bad way, but it brought out some of that
Spice,
sweeter. Sweeter. Yeah, I mean, if you want on your next pour,
no, I got my own water glass.
Yeah, because it's sterile.
Let me get my
but it does bring out a little more like that sweet. Don't fucking plastic. I think
I didn't.
No, I like it. I you guys being, the connoisseurs,
we just drink a lot, smoke a lot.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to send you something that I know that you hadn't experienced. And on top of it, I didn't want to send something that just came from, your typical 800-pound gorilla, small batch. Here's this boutique thing that we just did, 100 exclusive cases of, because I'm kind of not into that. I like the little guy. I like the rebel. I like, the guys that are trying to break tradition a little bit. And so I like this story. I like what they're doing. I'm not here to proclaim, that it is hands down the greatest thing to ever arrive, on the liquor shelf. But I think
we're drinking right now.
I think it's special and it's unique. And it's got kind of a cool story behind it. So
I would agree with that.
Yeah, thanks for sending us something that we really like and can't get in Ohio.
Well, yeah.
Something to look forward to.
Well, hey, I mean, that's the best marketing there is, right? Is advertise and talk about it, and then make sure nobody can get it.
Exactly. Because not only do you not get the first sale, you don't get the second or the third or any sales at all.
Yeah.
But thanks for the
there's
gift.
just huge. Yeah, there's huge demand. Just you can't get it.
Thank you also for the gifts of this. I have not seen this type of tumbler. This is very cool. This is going to have 526, right? That's how you say it?
Yes, sir. Yes,
526 Media Group. That is the company that was the.
That's
whole,
it. Yep. That's our
the whole
company.
thing.
That's our media company. That's the one that publishes everything, including ATF.
It's amazing,
and,
man.
We had those done just because I mean, those are, kind of your Yeti style, but they're made for liquor,
You got the wooden bottle opener here too.
Every camping and barbecue essential.
Definitely. I mean, it's got a little weight to her too.
It's thick. It's not just like the thin metal bottle openers.
And then the hats, we got the camo hat, which is I'm throwing that out there because we're talking about the fact you sent this. And so I appreciate the gifts.
I gotta get the curve.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you got to throw the curve, man. You're not Bieber, are you?
No, I hate straight billed hats.
All right.
Yeah, amen. That's
Hated-
un-American.
But that's cool.
That's
That's
a
cool
hell
that
of an
you after working
so-
for anyone.
hell of an outfit, Nate. Pink shirt, camo hat. You're
Not your typical camo hat outfit. You see his shorts. He
Tell me
walked in.
they're,
I'm like,
they're
what are you
Hawaiian print.
You
Yeah.
celebrating Easter? You going on an egg hunt here soon? You got that and what color is this?
Blue. They're blue.
It's a bright blue.
Hey, be glad I didn't wear my blue paisley pattern shorts.
I'm just glad you wore pants.
I'm glad I kept them on.
What does that mean? Jesus, that is not.
Because it's fucking hot.
All right. Let's move on to the Nub Habano. Nate has been slipping the last few weeks.
Good
Going
call.
Further and further towards the R-rated in a weird way. Not a weird way. The undercrown.
I caught you off guard with that one.
That
You
one-
still can't get that out of your head.
We're reeling a little bit. We gotta take a pause and a little break.
It happens on our show. Like yours is much more structured. We were kind of like me going off on tangents on your show was like, oh, this is nice, a little different. You know what I mean? Where on this show, it just happens.
That's just normal.
It's good. I like
It's
it.
a very loose framework. The Nub Habano. This was a product from Oliva. This is from someone that's been on the show before. Sam Lucia was actually working with Oliva at the time, and kind of came out. He was the head of this whole project back in the 2010s. I can't recall exactly what year this came out, but basically the Nub Habano is one of 4 staple blends for Nub. And now you'll find that it's part of I think they still use the Studio Tobacco, but they might have even dropped that at this point. It's just an Oliva product, right? It's just Nub cigars. But the Habano is along with the Connecticut, Cameroon, and Maduro. I can't believe we've gone 225 episodes without doing a Nub on this. We've done a lot of Oliva products, but it's kind of it's I don't want to say it's old news, but this is a not a brand new. People know what Nubs are. If you're a cigar smoker, you've seen these, whether or not you've had them. They're known for being anywhere between 3 and 4 inches, mostly 4 inches, but you have a couple. I think Cameroon has a 3.
They also go to a 4.5. They do a 4.5 by 64
torpedo.
box press torpedo.
Yeah. But this, what we're smoking, at least, I don't know what size you have, Pat, but it's a 4 by 60 is what we're smoking tonight.
Yep, exactly the same.
That's the most popular size. The Habano blend, it does come in a 66 ring gauge, so a 4 by 66. I mean, it is a short hog leg. I mean, it's stout. And but this is something that Sam worked with some of the tobaccos that Oliva cigars were using at the time. This is going to be a Nicaraguan Habano wrapper with Nicaraguan filler and binder. This is something that is, in my opinion, some people compare it to the Oliva V, but that's got that Ecuadorian wrapper on it. This, in my opinion, is closer to the, and not to say it's the same if you guys have had it and you haven't had this one, but the Oliva O Natural, which is a Nicaraguan Puro. It's got a Nicaraguan Habano wrapper. It's got Nicaraguan filler and binder. Not saying he just repackaged it and made new sizes, but when I smoke this and I used to love this. I still like it. I used to love this when it came out. I remember I went to an event actually at Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio, before I worked there. And Sam Lucia was in town. They had a band and all this stuff, and they were doing it. And I bought a box. He gave me all this swag, stickers, all this cool stuff because they were really working hard. Sam Lucia parted ways with Oliva. I think it was around 2016. They kept the blends. He had already done a follow-up series called Cane, and he had some great success. And so Sam Lucia has now branched off. At one point, he had Lucia Tobacco, which was very cool. He had the white and the black, some great blends.
Luchador as well.
The Luchador was one of his, was a cool series for him. But it was one of those things that he kind of fell into. Unfortunately, he was with Tarano Cigars, and then they sold out. So then he went to General through that sale, that acquisition, and he worked with them for a period of time, parted ways with them, tried to kind of basically get all that product and bring it back in and start his own brand by himself. And that transpired into something that he does now called Stogie Bird, which we've had him on the show. This has now been a couple years, I want to say, but it's a mail order type of a monthly subscription. And I'm giving him a shout out just because no ill will to Oliva Cigars, who makes this cigar, but the story behind it and the name behind it. I mean, you have Matt Booth, popping up behind you, and kind of another just a personality in the industry. And Sam Lucia, being a Navy guy and having this great story of basically being a rep and then growing in the industry. And now he has his mail order thing. So check out Stogie Bird. And also, like I said, I mean, some of these products are still just great products that he had his face and his name behind. But the Nub Habano, it's the whole idea behind the 4x60 from when they first came out with this was that you light up a cigar a lot of times, a traditional size, and the first half inch to an inch, it's developing, and then you get into that sweet spot, kind of like a baseball bat, the end of it, and then when you get to that, closer to the handle, it's going to really you just don't get a good connection. You know what I mean? Like it kind of rattles your hands a little bit. It's you can still get on base and all that stuff, but if you hit that sweet spot, it just takes it for a ride. And I think that's kind of when they came out with this 4x60 size, which others have now duplicated and mimicked.
Right.
This is something that when you light it up, the idea is that after those first couple puffs, you're in the cigar, you're in that wider ring gauge, so it's going to burn cooler, shorter. Once you take it and really get it going, there's a nice flavor right off the bat, as if you've been smoking the cigar for a little bit and you say, wow, now it's really coming along.
Well, I mean, you've forgotten more about cigars than I'll ever know, but I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was certainly one of the first ones that was a larger ring gauge, shorter length type concept, right? I mean,
now, that's the whole name behind it is Nub. I mean, they've made the whole series behind this. I mean, the whole brand behind Nub is exactly that. And now people will ask, like, oh, I like, it's kind of like Kleenex, right? I need a Kleenex. Well, you don't say, well, all I have is Puffs lotion. Right. I mean, do you want one of those? You know what I mean? Like it's something like that where people will ask. I like
it's a descriptor.
Nub size.
Yeah.
So is that successful of a concept that you had this where people coming in like, I like like Nub size, short, fat, and all that stuff. You're like, well, we have Nubs over here, and they also have this brand, this brand, this brand, this brand. They're like, that's exactly what I want, but. Just like
I just picked up a box of Ligas that I mean same thing, right? I mean I think they're 60x4 and same principle, right?
Any brand, a lot of brands have that out there where you're going to have the short and fat, and it is kind of like Grand Habano. We featured one of their cigars not too long ago, and it's something that they call theirs shorty. Right. I mean, it's the Grand Habano number 5, and that size is shorty.
Alec
Bradley now has a whole sampler that is killer called Chunk.
Yeah.
So I mean, you take this concept of Nub, and it's caught on. I mean, obviously it's a worthwhile. I don't smoke 60 ring gauge cigars most of the time, but oddly enough, I'll smoke a 4x60. It's really it's very in my opinion, it's not deceiving, but it doesn't seem like a big cigar because it is shorter. What do you think, Nate?
You'd have to stack 2 of these to get that Asylum Pandemonium.
2 and a little more. It's 8.5.
Yeah. No, I've been a fan of the Nubs since they came out. For the longest time, my favorite one was the Cameroon, but that's because I like Cameroon tobacco. Cameroon's one of those that's like hit or miss with a lot of people. But probably my favorite one right now is that Nub Maduro because it's so rich.
Is that Brazilian Maduro?
I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. But it's so rich and has so much flavor.
Yeah.
I mean, it smokes like a different cigar because I remember, you talked about Alec Bradley. They have that one, the Magic Toast.
Oh yeah.
And and they have the traditional sizes, Robusto, Toro for that. And when the owner of the Tinderbox got the chunk as a sampler from our old rep.
Right.
He smoked that, and he goes, that does not taste like the other sizes. That tastes like something completely different, but in a good way. Like, it's just so rich and so much flavor. But yeah, kind of like you, like, this is not typically one that
Maduro's a Brazilian wrapper.
Yeah, this is not a. It's one of those where, like, it's been around for so long that it kind of gets overlooked unless you're just a really big fan of nubs. Like, that's one of those where people come in the shop, they're asking, like, hey, do you guys carry nubs?
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily, you know, someone comes in like, yeah, I'm looking for this type of cigar, and you point them towards a nub, unless they specifically say that size.
Right.
I feel like this line gets overlooked a little bit because of all the other cigars in the Oliva portfolio.
Right. No, it is. And again, a lot of people don't know that they did a good enough job, in my opinion, that they differentiated Nub from Oliva for a long time, that when Sam Lucia left, almost as I don't want to say backfire, but they tried to rebrand it as Studio Tobacco, and they got like this like cool like truck, and like they had a brand ambassador, and they tried to do it. And
I think that's still on the little sticker that comes across the box that keeps the box sealed.
so they do have cool branding, yeah, with the leaf and everything else. Like, they had some sweet, like, and I think it does say Studio Tobacco on there.
Yeah.
You're probably right. But I mean, they try to like revitalize the whole thing. And I don't know, like, you know, for me, I had met Sam, and I wasn't as far into the industry at the time, but it was one of those things that I'm just like, yeah, I mean, it's still a good cigar, but like, just don't try so hard. You know what I mean? Like, just don't. We don't need a new brand ambassador for this. Like, it's a good cigar. The cane's good. Sam did great. We all know what's going on. Just stick with it as Nub by Oliva. That would have been, for me, from my vantage point, that would have been more well suited. Like, you know what I mean? Whether or not you knew the story behind it, even if you didn't, you're just like, oh, Nub by Oliva's good. Yeah, I like Oliva. It's like, yeah, Nub. Oh, okay, I get it. That's cool. That's where I was at with it.
Yeah, but when you hear, you know, Nub by Studio Tobacco, like, what the fuck is Studio Tobacco? Yeah.
Who's this guy behind? Like, who am I talking to? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't like it. Ray Cheshire says, love the Nub, and typically they smoke very well, but I recently received some as a gift from the U.S., and they just weren't there. One literally exploded. I feel like exploded is a little aggressive, but
yeah, literally exploded.
Like, yeah, like made by
they should issue a recall on that.
And in general, they were bitter and felt too young. No, Ray, I mean, yeah, exploded, for those that don't smoke cigars, basically sometimes they can pop, right? You know what I mean? So the wrapper can pop. The wider ring gauges can do that sometimes. But Ray, I know, good friend of ours as well. Pat, I don't know if you ever met Ray Cheshire.
I did meet Ray. Good.
Okay.
How you doing, Ray? Good to see you again.
So, again, an avid cigar smoker. He definitely knows what he's talking about with that. And so, I don't know. This one's smoking well. I don't have any issues with it. I know you've probably sat on this for a while, because the way we picked the cigar tonight was, you know, Pat basically sent me pictures of his humidors and cupadors and everything else. And we were going to have, shout out, I don't think he's listening right now, but Rob Wilson with Rocky Patel Cigars was scheduled for this week. Pat was last week, and we just combined them. And then it was Rob's 45th birthday. So happy birthday to Rob Wilson. He
didn't want to share the spotlight with me.
No, he literally a day or so ago, he's like, you know, it's going to be 93. Do you have air conditioning in your garage? He's like,
come on.
But he's going to go. He's actually on the road, but he's going down to the Dayton area. He's going to spend tonight with his mom. His mom was actually excited that and he lives up in Cleveland. He's traveling.
Good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah, we'll excuse him on that one.
We'll get him back on the show here soon. Good friend of the podcast.
He blew us off to go see his mother. We'll let that slide.
You know, who you know, in terms of customers that shop for, you know, nubs or nub-like cigars, you know, to me, I do prefer larger ring gauge cigars, and you know, I don't know, you know, call it a testosterone insecurity. So I feel like more of a man if I'm holding something really huge in my hand, because it's not something I'm used to doing. So
comment, but go ahead.
I beat you to it, buddy. I'm not going to leave you an opening tonight.
No.
So but I work a lot. I get home late sometimes. It doesn't mean I don't want a cigar, but I don't want to spend an hour in the backyard by myself. So, just so I'm kind of more of length of the experience.
Yeah.
And I don't want to waste a bunch of good cigars. So to me, it kind of feels like, is the main audience guys that, do smoke a lot and they're buying it more for duration, or what do you see?
So go ahead, Nate.
I think it's funny. Before we went live, I was telling Sean, shop I used to work at, when we were doing an Oliva event and Nub was included in that, I had recommended this cigar, and it was this 4x60 Habano to a customer.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I want something that's going to smoke, more than an hour. And I'm like, no, this cigar will smoke. Like, this cigar smokes slow, or it burns slow. And so I'd lit up a 3x58, and
Habano.
No, but it was that same size.
Cameron.
It was a 3x58, and it lasted almost an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this cigar is still going to last. So there's a lot of times where people will look, and they will look past the ring gauge. They will see that it's only about a 4-inch cigar. Like, oh, cool, that's a good 30-minute smoke. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. It's a good smoke.
Yeah.
It's not a 30-minute smoke.
Yeah.
Like that cigar is going to burn for a while. But yeah, typically the people that are coming in looking for nubs, like, they're looking for nub. They name it by name. That's what they're looking for. And it's kind of a mix between the time frame they're looking for in a cigar, so like a 4x60 rather than a 6x60, or they are just really big fans of that flavor, whichever blend it or whichever wrapper and blend it is. They're just really big fans of that. There's a couple guys that come in, and almost every time they come in, they get that Nub Maduro because they just love the richness and flavor of that cigar. Even though they do typically smoke like 6x60s, they love the flavor of that Nub Maduro.
I think Nub Connecticut is still the number one seller for the series.
That would not surprise me.
Yeah.
That would not surprise me.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody describe it like Steve did, during the opening, but
the sweet spot part of it.
Yeah, getting right to that sweet spot. And I never thought about it that way, but you're 100% right, because it's, it kind of like this whiskey we're drinking, the first sip, there's no warm up period. You're going straight for broke.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the same with the nub.
Yeah. And I will say, so we've talked a lot about the story of the Nub Habano. So if this is anything similar based on what I know, what I've heard in the industry, what you see the layout as far as the blend, you've got a nice sheen. I don't know, like how long were you sitting on the Nub Habano? How long is it?
I've had these for a little while, maybe 12, 18 months.
Yeah. So I don't know how yours are. I mean, we've had ours. These are coming out of the tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. The humidor there. They've been, kind of regular. We usually will have a good stock. So I'm not saying that we order them every week. I mean, this is something that we order a few times a year, and we order in bulk, in good quantity. But there's a nice sheen on the wrapper.
Mm-hmm.
There really is. It's not like a hardy wrap. It's not toothy, in my opinion. You don't see a whole lot of bumps in it when I'm looking at it, but maybe my eyes are getting bad as I'm getting old, according to my eye doctor. But it's an attractive wrapper leaf, a little bit, some seams and everything else you'll see on, at least on the one I'm looking at here, but it's got a nice sheen to it, right? So it shows like a little bit of oil on there. So for a Nicaraguan Habano wrapper, it's a nice leaf on there.
Well, I'll tell you, it's certainly well constructed. I mean, it burns well.
Yeah.
I haven't had to relight or anything like that, which certainly goes into storage and everything else. But I mean, it's a well-made cigar.
It is, and the draw is good. The construction is nice on it, in my opinion. It cut well. If anything, again, just talking about the cigar, I got this major fly.
I know there's one.
And it's going to die soon because it's going so slow. You know what I mean? or it's just fucking with us. Like,
or maybe because it's 115 degrees in your freaking garage.
yeah, I see Nate and Ray Cheshire seeing who's hotter. Not who's hotter. Who's hotter?
Who's hotter?
I don't know. They're talking Celsius and Fahrenheit. But the Nub Habano, basically, it's very, very, in my opinion, simple branding on that. Even the boxes are, even though they are a little bit more of a stout box because of the size, right? Obviously. So it's shorter and it's taller. They put 24 in a box.
So you got 4 rows.
A lot of
6.
sticker on it that you have to cut through. It's a pain in the ass.
They're some of the most annoying boxes to open.
But I'll tell you, when I bought the box at the event with Sam Lucia, Oliva boxes in general, you open it up, Nubs have more stickers on the outside, but they throw like a pamphlet in there. You know, it shows the different brands, you know, with the Nubs, shows the different sizes. If you get like an Oliva Connecticut Reserve, like it talks about the cigar. It has a piece of cedar on there.
You got the paper.
Yep. If you're stocking shelves is a pain in the ass because you have trash. You're just like, all right, I just need the fucking cigar. You buy it as a box as a consumer. The presentation is not without, you know, you really, I enjoyed it, especially as I was getting into cigars. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Now I got a booklet to read, you know, like, oh cool. You know, I can learn about this a little bit. But the bands on it are extremely simple, very thin.
Unlike our next cigar.
You what?
Unlike our next cigar.
Unlike the next cigar where they go with it. True enough. So but I will say, for better or worse, it's very simple. It looks like they're using cigar rings, which is one of the top producers of cigar bands. So that's, you know, they're not skimping out on the bands by any means. There's just not a whole lot of pop to it. And I think,
I like that. I like the classic kind of throwback approach to that. You know, I mean, it reminds me of, one of my favorite cigars of all time. And it was one of the first kind of special experience cigars that I had. Somebody pulled out, a Cuban Monte Cristo No. 2. And it was just a very basic band, a beautiful construction, a perfectly built and blended cigar, that led to a great experience.
The band is basically, but it's interesting because, again, comparing it to the pairing tonight with the Yellow Rose, you come out with a bourbon today, it's a bold move to do something super basic, cigar wise as well. I mean, even like you mentioned the Monte Cristo that we have, you mentioned like a Monte Cristo No. 2. There's still the ode to the original, and then there's the secondary band, and on this one there's like a third and fourth, and on the Spada, the original, I think there's a foot band. No, there's not a foot band, but I mean it's like the whole cigar. You basically,
especially in that Robusto size, like almost the entire cigar is just bands,
covered. Yeah,
it's interesting, the difference, the dynamic there. Again, with this we talk about like whatever we call the covering on the neck and the pewter top on the Yellow Rose. I mean, but there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a matter of, I like the Nub when Oliva and Sam came out with this back in the day. Nothing's changed. The box has got a lot going on the sticker, but it's still that just slide top box. It's very basic when it comes down to it. And the cigar itself being short, you've just got this little thin band on there that says Nub, and underneath it's a Habano. And they really marketed it, in my opinion, fairly well, that each of the 4 core blends, you have a pale yellowish for the Connecticut. You have a white for the Cameroon. You have this brown, like a lighter tannish brown for the Habano, and a dark brown for the Maduro. Mm-hmm. So just looking at them out of Tinderbox at Easton, you have trays, so you can look at it and they recognize that color.
Right.
So
it's
thought out.
I mean, I mean, in retail, packaging is what sells, right? So, I mean, if you've got a cool bottle on the shelf, not to slight anybody or anything else, but just because of the bottle alone, and they've changed the blend, I mean, a couple times since they first came out, but I remember when Monkey Shoulder came out, I mean, that first experience, I mean, it was a pretty good whiskey. and then they changed the blend a couple times. But the bottle and the name is so damn cool. You know, I've gone in and I've bought, you know, thinking I ran out of it. I've got 3 freaking bottles, like, you know, sitting over in my bar, and now I kind of taste it, and it's just kind of like, yeah, it's all right. But it's great packaging, and every time I'm drawn to it for some insane reason. And I keep buying freaking bottles. So if you guys want any monkey shoulder, I can ship that out to you next time. But, you know, I
don't know, Southern California sounds pretty nice to visit, so maybe we'll
you guys can come out and hey, all the monkey shoulder you want to drink for free.
You're smoking indoors in an area of the country that is basically has HVAC outside. I mean, it's like you pay for that real estate where it's like, what's the temperature today?
Yeah,
80?
but
75, 80 degrees?
Yeah, it might be like 80, 82. But I mean, there's so many fucking liberals out here that, you know, like,
right. We weren't talking about that at this point.
You'll get the police called on you if you smoke outside. So,
like I said, visit. Would love to visit you out there. We can smoke behind your house, in your house, whatever.
100%. But I mean, back to packaging, the interesting thing is, I think that, you know, here's my opinion, is so many people have gone, you know, so extreme with the packaging. Now you've even got throwback brands, right. Like, you know, Matt Booth, for example, you know, his cigars and now his gin line, like his gin line almost looks like, you know, a moonshiner in, you know, the backwoods of fucking Kentucky, you know, hand printed the label on the bottle. But when it's sitting on the shelf, now just that minimalist approach stands out because everything's so blown up, you know, in wrappers and boxes and packaging and everything else.
So, and again, people buy for different reasons, right? I mean, it's one of those things that, again, even with this, I think of, you mentioned like the Monte Cristo, like a lot of the older Cuban lines, they've actually punched it up a little bit as well.
Right.
Well,
now they all have those secondary bands, right?
Well, they do if they have limited edition, but even like the Monte Cristo #2, I mean, now they've got a little bit more gold on there. They've got a little bit more, like a punchier embossment on there. Like they've actually not gone away completely.
Is that marketing, or is that a way to try and differentiate from like the counterfeits?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Yeah. In my opinion, both. But you know, in the American market, I think that, you know, whether it be whiskeys or spirits, or it may be, you know, on the cigar side, or really anything, it goes in trends, and you really do have to pay attention to what's doing well and market research and everything else, because like Matt Booth coming out with that, where it's like that old school. If there's the casual consumer coming in, it's tough to really predict why they're buying what they're buying. You know, It's like you have someone coming and buying you. You're a whiskey drinker. Okay, I'm going to buy you a gift. I'm coming over. You have a party or whatever else. We get that in the cigar side of it. You know, I don't know what they smoke. I just, you know, and they're overwhelmed because there's so many options. Now it's like, are they being helped by someone, or are they in a walk-in humidor that they don't have assistance, or if they're in like a liquor store that it's either busy or the person just sits behind the counter. Now that's that consumer. It's like, how do you get in their head? You can't. You got to go with numbers there.
Well, and what makes it even more confusing now is companies are deliberately, you know, choosing premium price points for their products. Even not necessarily that the product itself is premium, but they just know that if you put, you know, $120, $150 bottle of whiskey on the shelf, there's going to be a segment of consumers that walk in and buy it, you know, ignorantly, but just because it's got a cool label, it's got a cool name, and it's $150, so it's got to be great, right?
Right.
And that's a spin-off from the wine industry that you know, for decades have done the same thing until, you know, $2 Chuck comes along and wins all the contests, and they're like, oh shit, price point doesn't equal quality.
I've got a bottle of it at home. It's $4.
I've probably got a 55-gallon barrel of it if you guys want some.
What I'll say,
if we go out to Southern California, we will be hammered for as long as we're out there. I feel like if we're
nonstop smoking and drinking.
Say it was a bad.
Oh, okay. No, what I'll say about the packaging on this. So, you know, you talk about how this is a very, you know, kind of thin, basic band. It's a thinner band, but also think about to the ratio, the size of the cigar.
I agree.
So, like, it fits there, but also, you know, like Steve talked about, like this was the first cigar of its kind for that 4x60 and 3x58 or even smaller type sizes. So the cigar stands out on a shelf regardless of the band.
Yes.
Because they were the first one to have that size.
Yeah.
So they had this band. They didn't need to be fancy with the band because the cigar itself was standing out because of its unique size and shape. And they just haven't changed that because they haven't felt the need, because people, there's a reputation, there's a following behind this brand. People like this line of cigars. So there's no need to change it because there is a following to it.
I agree 100%. What was interesting is that at the time, so there's two sides of it real quick, and we'll go into the round out of part one. Pat said, like sometimes you want a good cigar, you light up, you get into it. Now you kind of know the story behind the sweet spot. It makes sense because when you say you don't have the whole night, or you came home from work, you got dinner, you're grilling out or whatever, you know what I mean? Or you got I got 45 minutes to whatever. I don't want to overcommit, but I want to have a good cigar. I want to enjoy it. You can enjoy this because you've had it. At a time, this was like a $6-7 cigar, maybe $7 for the Habano. With the way things have gone now, and at least in Ohio, with a 54-cent cap on tobacco tax, this is a $10 cigar for a 4x60. California, I think it's like $82 plus you took a second mortgage just to buy a box, whatever.
You've got to apply for a loan. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to run a credit check before you check out here.
Surprised in California, you can't just get them with food stamps.
Okay. Geez.
Oh, you can. You can. Stop it. They're not stamps anymore. They're credit cards.
Point being, oh man, that part 2 is going to be interesting. I feel like
that had nothing to do. My statement had nothing to do with politics.
Kind of. But anyways, yeah. So at the time, it was that shorter one. Now you go through a humidor again, same thing. And what you were saying, Pat, about these bottles, someone will buy it. We're like, well, it's kind of short. It's $10.50 for a short cigar. Well, no, but it does smoke longer. Now you're selling the product to those types of consumers, where they look at another cigar that's a traditional Toro, even that may even smoke quicker than a 4x60 Nub Habano, but they look at it like, well, that's $10. I'm going to go with the bigger one. You're like, all right. From retail standpoint, I'll take $10 is $10. Whatever you want to do.
I'll take your money. I don't care.
But we round out part 1. I know, Pat, you've watched the show before, but for those that haven't, they're listening live or you're listening after the fact, we round out part 1 with the rating. So unless there's something else you guys want to add specifically for the bottle or for the cigar, we rate it. 10 is the best. There's 3 ratings from each of us. And also, Sean, do you want to be a part of this? Yep. So we have audience as well, and Sean's got a mic in front of him, so we choose him. Sometimes we have one person. Sometimes we have 8 or 10 people in the garage. It's 90 degrees. We have one person. So Sean is the one that is the loyal guy in the garage, but we have typically a handful of people live studio audience as well as the people out there. So if you guys want to throw up your ratings in the comments, if you've had either the Yellow Rose Outlaw Bourbon or you've had the Nub Habano, throw up your ratings. We'll put them on there, the screen. 10's the best. 10 out of 10, whiskey, out of 10 cigar, and out of 10 the pairing for however you want to rate that pairing. Sean, go ahead.
With the Yellow Rose, I'm going to go with 8.5. I like the as I kept drinking it, I started getting more flavors out of it, and it just is very smooth. And you said some floral notes, Nate. I agree with that. I think that it's pretty good. I didn't try it with water or ice, but I could see it'd be interesting what it tastes like with that too. The Nub, I'm always a fan of the Nub. I'll give that an 8.5 as well. I remember it had to have been 15 plus years ago. I came to the tinderbox, and it was a guy from Pittsburgh was hand wrapping nubs for everyone they walked in the door.
That would have been Sam.
Yeah, that was fucking cool.
15 years ago, really?
It was before Molly. It was a long time ago. Wow. It was a neat experience. It's such a neat experience to be able to try it and fresh roll and stuff. Whew, it was good. I'm always a fan of those. I'll smoke any brand or any kind of them. They're always a good go-to, especially if I'm grilling out or something. It's a nice one to have.
Pairing.
I'll do 8.5 as well. I think they're both
8.5 across the board.
Yep, I think they go well with each other. There's, I don't know. I just like the way they go.
Nice. So. Pat, how about you?
I think for now, granted, I mean, I sent you the bottle, so now I'm going to be the asshole that.
You don't have to be the asshole. You can be the asshole.
I'm going to be. It just works out that way. I give. I would say the Yellow Rose is an 8, and I give it that because I drink a lot of whiskey. Number one. Number two, I like it because it's interesting, it's unique, it's complex, but it isn't my favorite whiskey out of what Yellow Rose produces. And I've had that luxury and you guys haven't. So I would say it's an 8. In terms of the nub, I like nubs, and I especially like the Habano. So I give the nub an 8.5. And in terms of the pairing, though, I'd give it a strong 8.5 or a 9 because, together the complexity of the Yellow Rose and that strong hit off the front side made the nub a little bit more interesting than it normally is. And I like the two together. So
nice.
So I'd give the combined rating a little bit higher than the individual.
That speaks volumes for a pairing right there. Nate?
So on the whiskey, which before I give mine, I already wrote mine down, so I'm not going to change it. But Pat, what is the retail of this bottle? We have not talked about that whatsoever.
Right.
How much does this bottle cost when you were able to get it in Texas?
Yeah, so they've opened up distribution, so they are now available in California and a few other states, and through some wholesalers and distributors online. This is the most expensive, actually, out of the 4 that they normally produce. So this retails for $49.95, at least here in California. That's what it was. The others are more around the 39 to 43 range. So they're all reasonable whiskeys for the price.
When I looked it up, it was higher than that. So I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah,
for many reasons.
Same here. When I looked it up, I was seeing prices.
79.
I think the lowest I saw was 57.
Okay,
was the lowest. But yeah, no. So under right at that $50 price point, that's since we looked it up because we can't get it here in Ohio, like to hear it come in at that $50 price point, it's a little bit less than what we thought. So on the whiskey, I'm an 8 on the whiskey. It was enjoyable. It definitely surprised me because again, what we had looked up and read about it, it was not what I was expecting. It surprised me in a good way. It goes to show that climate in Texas that you can have a product that's less than 2 years old and get that kind of color out of it. Again, they're also using smaller barrels, so that helps too.
Ray says now you like it $49.
Ray, I'd written my rating down before I knew the price.
Put it up on the
I know.
At 49, it's at 10.5.
No, I wrote my rating down before the price, Ray.
It was a good disclaimer.
On the Nub Habano, I'm going to be a little different than you guys so far. I'm a 7 on the Nub. It's a good cigar. It's not my favorite from the Nub line. This would probably come in like 3rd out of 4 for me. It's enjoyable. It smokes well. Has good flavor. For some reason, I was expecting, because it'd been so long since I'd had one of these, I remembered it being a little bit stronger of a cigar, and to me, it just didn't.
It's been a while.
It has been a while.
Yeah.
But we didn't even talk about that. Like I'd say this is medium plus in terms of the strength on it. But it has good flavor. It's smooth. It burns well. Good construction. Which for a 4-inch cigar, you can't really afford to have many construction issues. Like you can't have many runs and tunneling and stuff like that.
Plug, that's for sure. Yeah.
No, but you can get a draw poker through it pretty easily without busting through the sides.
Ballpoint pen.
Yeah. So I'm a 7 on that. And then as far as the pairing, I'm also a 7 on the pairing. I don't necessarily think they enhance one another. In fact, when I was going from like whiskey to the cigar, it made the cigar taste spicier and a bit more harsh than by itself. But I think they could just kind of stand up to one another. So I'm a 7 on the pairing.
Yeah, nice. So with the Yellow Rose Outlaw Bourbon, I like the idea of it. I mean, again, it's interesting that you said that, Pat. That when we discovered the price of it, this is the more expensive one. What was the smaller batch one? There's one that was finished that you didn't mention it, but when I was looking it up, there was one that was finished in Cabernet barrels.
I apologize.
There was it's fine. There were two that were like smaller batch sounding. There was very specific name. It wasn't the American. It wasn't the rye.
So the American whiskey is kind of the mass produced low proof.
Right.
Rye whiskey is
That's
a blend
not
of 1 and 3 year whiskey, and then Harris County straight bourbon.
Not that
is
one.
So those are the 4. So you've got premium American whiskey. So that's a blend of 4 whiskeys. That's the 80 proof.
There was
then
one.
You've got rye whiskey, which is a blend of 1 and 3 year rye whiskey. But it is softer than most ryes, and that's 90 proof.
So that makes sense because they do some small batches, which is interesting. Premium collection number 2. That one was actually, we've had some smaller distilleries on before, and this is what they're doing with this is that, and maybe this is more expensive, but it's a premium finished select bourbon. This release, we chose Cabernet barrels to add a richness of flavor in our unique climate. So they did only 4,500 bottles.
Right. So these are their
smaller ones. They did a single malt too, which is interesting. I don't know if have you had that?
No,
so there
I've
is
only
on their
had their 4. Yeah, these 4 are like their mainstays. So
those
those are always produced.
That makes sense.
They're always the same. And then they do this kind of collection.
Yeah.
That are all very small batches. They're one-offs.
Which is cool.
Once they're gone, they're gone.
Yeah.
And each one is boutique and a little bit it's a craft line.
I got you. So, and I'm excited to see what comes from Yellow Rose as they get a little bit bigger. I loved watching. If you guys go to Yellow Rose, I just had it up because I was looking at that. YellowRoseDistilling.com. You can check it out. They've got this cool, much like ATF Lifestyle, you have that kind of like that promo intro video to the whole thing. They have one of those, which is really neat. A little bit of history, all within like a minute and 15 seconds. It was really kind of a cool thing. That's Roach Clip, man.
But the cool thing too, which is happening more and more, and even in fact happened to Matt just recently, on the cigar line.
That booth, yeah.
Is they got invested in, backed by larger companies. So Zamora is now behind Yellow Rose. So they're going to have a lot more horsepower for production,
bigger.
For marketing,
they acquired
for
them 5 years ago in 2017.
Yeah, bigger bankroll.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give this. Go ahead.
So the nice thing about these acquisitions, it seems like when they work in their best light, is these big conglomerates come in, but they still retain the core staff, and they just give them a bankroll. They retain most of the liberties for creative, and they're just able to propel the line a lot bigger than a little guy can, competing in
we've seen huge. We've seen that recently with a couple of whiskeys that we have featured.
Yes, yes, we have. With this product being what it is, it's tough for me to give a rating because it's what you're looking for. Just objectively, this I'll give it and this sounds bad to some, but again, this isn't one of those what you see like oh, if it doesn't hit a 90, it's bad. I'm gonna give it I'll go even more, 7.75. I'll give it a 7 3/4 because I didn't know what to expect from this. And honestly, for 35, 45, 50, 60, 70, 80. I don't care what you're paying for it. It is unique. And I got to tell you, if you like the flavor of this, you would pay probably more than the 49. That's the whole point of this product, is that it's unique. I like it. I wouldn't always have it on my bar. So if the three of us, Sean's over, four of us are hanging out, we have a couple people listening, you know, Tim's out there, Ray, everyone's over, you know what I mean? And I like crack this bottle and I kill it. I'm not desperate to go out and restock it on my bar. It's fun. It's good. I enjoyed it. But at the same time, it's not going to be at my top 10 list.
It's not a mainstay.
I just killed this bottle, and now I got, oh shit, I'm out of Yellow Rose. You know, I need to get it. It's not there. If I'm just in the liquor store and I'm like, you know, I'm at, you know, here in Ohio, it's all state run. So a lot of times you're in the grocery store. I'm going to swing in there. You know what I haven't had in a little while? Outlaw Bourbon. I'm going to grab one. That's where I'm at with this one. So that's where it's like, it's 8-ish, but probably on the lower side of it. Nub Habano.
You know what? I think that's perfect. I agree with you completely. Yeah. And for me, in the Yellow Rose line, the American whiskey, you know, their premium American whiskey, that's what that is for me. That's always a staple. Yeah, it's always one that I have, because I know anybody that comes over who's a whiskey drinker is going to enjoy it. Yeah. You know, it's that, you know, it's kind of that, you know, Jack Daniels plus that Angel Envy plus. It's still unique enough, but it's also middle of the road enough that you're not polarizing tastes. Like
you enjoy
you know, like Scotch, right? Like Lefroy. You either love Lefroy or you hate Lefroy, and there's no middle ground. Yeah. And so mainstay for me is
funny
not
example,
Lefroy,
but it's not bad,
because everybody that comes over is like, oh yeah, I'm a Scotch drinker. It's like, cool, I'm gonna pull out Lefroy double cask and let's or double wood, and let's see how you do with that. Yeah. It's like, fuck, I guess I didn't like Scotch.
So that's the whole thing. I think the marketing behind this is cool if you know the story. It's slightly deceiving if you don't know the story, because they have bourbon on there, but the way they label it, it's Outlaw Bourbon, 2 dots on the outside of whiskey. So there you go. The cigar, the Nub Habano, I'm going to give an 8. I think this is a solid everyday smoke. If you guys like the size, I'm not on the same boat as Nate. This is, of the Nub core series, if you will, this is my favorite. It always has been. I've had them all 4 of them, but I've also had like I think there was a double Maduro, there was a box press, there was I remember it comes up on Facebook memories sometimes. I had a Barbara Pole limited edition Nub. I've had a lot. This is the one that I remember, I said it earlier, I bought a box at the event. This is the one, because it's medium plus, but of the Nub series, I think it still is deceivingly stronger maybe than the Maduro strength wise, but the Maduro with that Brazilian wrapper. So again, comparing them just like you did with the Yellow Rose bottles, it's tough to get away from that. This is my number one Nub. If I'm going to buy a Nub, this is the one it's going to be. So 8 is solid. And, you know, sucks hearing that from Ray Cheshire out there that, you know, that he got some and he thinks that it's lacking these days. Hopefully they correct those things no matter what's going on. Mine smoked beautifully. The Nub over here to my left that Nate is smoking, he has a roach clip on. So.
It's not a roach clip. It's a cigar nubber.
Roach. No, we don't sell roach clips.
No, I was given this when I was a
but
rep
I'm
from
down
a cigar shop.
getting to my fingertips, and that's what I'm talking about with that whole cigar, is that you light it up, it's in the sweet spot. It did not get hot for me.
Yeah.
And I am down to the last inch.
Which is why I'm using my cigar nubber, because it still has a lot of flavor. It hasn't turned bitter to where it tastes, you know, like nothing but heat on my palate. There's just not enough room for me to have my fingers on it and then also take a pull off the cigar. So that's why I busted out my nubber.
It's fair. It's fair. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just commenting.
I can hear your judgment.
That's just in everything I say. So I'll say the pairing, guys. feel like some of us are on the same page. 8.5. I think the pairing together. I like this cigar. I've always liked this cigar. It's not necessarily go-to. The bottle, I said, it's not something that I need to have. I'm not pissed off that it's not available in Ohio yet. When I see it, and I've had it with some good people, and it shows up on the shelves in Ohio possibly, and maybe I can't verify that, but if I see it, I don't have it on my bar, I'll probably buy a bottle because now I've got the story. I've got the whole thing. So yes, like with you with the Lefroy, it's one of those things that, what do you like? What haven't you had? Look at my bar. I haven't had that yellow rose. Well, just so you know, it's not going to be like the bourbon you're thinking, but it's definitely worth a try. It's definitely, you might really like this, but get the word, even though it's on there, get the word bourbon out of your mind, because this is not what you're expecting, because it is 100% corn, Texas corn. It is smaller barrels. It is that aged at least 1 year. Who knows where this might go? We might see 2 years on there as they get bigger.
We've seen that with other whiskey companies.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So you might see that this product might grow to the point that it has 2 years on the statement. Now all of a sudden they've been able to maybe get a little bit wider audience, which will be interesting.
Well, this is one of those, like if you look at their history initially, like they were selling their bottles when it was, 5 to 7 months old.
Correct. Yeah.
And so they were aging it a little bit at a time and getting it out there and able to hang on to a little bit to get
Correct.
a little bit more age.
So I think there'll be some growth in the company, and as you said, Pat, that they have that bankroll now behind them. So it'll be even more exciting to see what they've done with their 4 staple products, and then we've had barrel bourbon. They're only batches. They're only the big small batches, if you will. That's their niche. I'm excited to see what happens with these guys. So with part 1, and I know this is very different than the ATF Lifestyle podcast, and I appreciate, Pat has committed, but it's also earlier where you're at.
Oh yeah, I'm doing great.
Being a part 2 here,
it's going to make for a good night.
My apologies to your wife and family. But
you can pay them back when you come out and visit.
That would be amazing. So I do want to thank for part 1, you guys supporting us, patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. The monthly contributions and support is amazing. For those that have sent us for a bottle, Venmo @Bourbon and BS. That's a one-time contribution, whether it just be a general contribution because you're enjoying the show. You've been drinking too much. You send us money. We appreciate that. If you want to buy a bottle, just put it in the notes what you're looking for us to review, and we will do that. Also, Tinderbox at Easton for the Nub Habano. If you're just tuning in live, make sure you tune back to listen to what we had to say about not only the bottle of Yellow Rose Outlaw Bourbon, but also the Nub Habano from Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. Altadis USA, we're going to be lighting up the Monte Cristo Espada Oscuro next for part 2. BS Cigar Company, thank you for the gold and silver and the support every week for the last several years. And guys, thanks for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed it. Pat, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. It was a pleasure being here, and thanks for doing what you do.
Absolutely. And for those that are listening live, stay tuned or tune back in. Share it, like it, review it, all that good stuff. We're going to be getting into part 2, which is Beyond the BS, and it's going to be ATF Lifestyle. And we will talk about, as you look behind Pat right now on his screen there, ATF on the magazine. There it is, right behind you. Guys, cheers. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. See you in a bit.
Is the volume on your laptop all the way up?
That's all the way up.
Okay.
We have a bunch of fans in our ears. Yeah.
Do I need to speak louder?
No, you're good. The feed, I think, will be good. We just when I was doing it on last Monday and in here, literally my MacBook is sitting in front of us,
right,
on a table on 4 cigar boxes, and we're listening off the audio from the speakers. We also have 3 fans going in the garage right now. So, we can hear you, but it's not like when it's not as hot, like we won't have the fans going. So it's a lot clearer.
I also have a 20% hearing loss. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah, I hear you. So are we on break right now, or are we
So this-
still
break,
live,
we're
or-
still live.
We're still live for anyone watching on Facebook and YouTube live. But this will be part of like the audio that gets posted that'll kind of be cut out.
Yeah, so when I post it on like iTunes, Spotify, and everything else, I divide it up in part 1, part 2. That's why I kind of have that little silence when I go onto that. But this is like there's Ray right now commenting live.
The feed is great, fantastic. All right, then I'm gonna piss in the backyard because I'm still allowed to do that.
There you go.
For now.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll outlaw that soon.
Ray, you're out there. I'm very interested for your comments in part 2. I hope you're gonna be tuning in.
Where's Sean Anderson? We need Sean Anderson for part 2.
Text him.
Oh shit.
Can we hear him pissing? Is he literally outside?
Oh
Is
yeah,
that like a patio?
yep.
I feel like
I thought I heard it too.
you gotta love Southern California. He's got like wood shelves and a TV behind him. He's like, oh yeah, no, this is right by my pool.
Yeah. Yeah, you can still piss outside. You can take a shit outside in the street. They won't do a damn thing.
Well, I don't know. You know, it is California.
Exactly.
They get when you get your feelings hurt, it's a felony, but you can rob the Apple store and it's a misdemeanor. So, go figure. All right, I'm back. And no, I didn't wash my hands, so go fuck yourself.
Just pour some whiskey on your hands and rub them together.
Exactly.
Oh boy.
How's Ray doing? Where in the world is Ray?
Ray is in Vietnam.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, he's in Vietnam. We were very, very lucky that he was able to plan his trip to the U.S. after several years, that he was in town for the Smoking 10 event in March.
Nice. Where's Brandon these days?
Karst?
Yeah.
He's still local. He's working currently. Not that anyone's listening. I know he's actually being entertained by it because he's the smartest kid you've ever met, as you know.
Yes, he is.
But he's still working for Bank of America, and he has a house in Gahanna.
I can't remember. Do you call him the smartest dumb person or the dumbest smart person?
Dumbest smart kid you ever met.
There you go. Dumbest smart kid you've ever met.
Smartest dumb kid. Brandon's still Brandon. He's killing it right now, as we all expect. But you know that he was out your way when I visited him. That's the last time I was in Southern California when he was living out there.
I didn't even know he was out here.
He was out there in 2000. Shit.
He had talked about it the last time that he and I talked, which was shortly after I left Ohio.
2005-ish. He was out there, living there. He was welding. He was out there for about 2 years, I think. 2-3 years, maybe.
Good for him.
Sean, you want more?
No, I'm good.
Because being a smart person as well as very talented, he I don't know, he's probably on a second or third major, still hadn't finished college, or he just didn't know what he wanted to do. So he had a connection out there through I think it was his brother with the Laotian family, and the father of the family down in Orange County was like the lead or manager of a company that did military welding contracts. So Brandon just moved out across the country and learned how to weld, and was doing welding for military contracts. And
it pays good money.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there you go. So that's how he's doing.
Yeah, you get your certification as a welder, and year one you can be making $70,000.
Well, I'll tell you what, and it's one of the things maybe we'll touch on, in part 2. It's it's a sad state of the country that our education systems are brainwashing these kids into believing that they've got to be doctors or lawyers or engineers, or they're a failure in life. And at the end of the day, there's all these trades like building houses and plumbing and welding and fixing cars and everything else that are essential services, and literally you can make 6 figures in doing, and there's literally nobody who wants to do it, and there's even one of the industries we serve is transportation. And there's a guy that owns a trucking company. I mean, it's a good sized trucking company.
Yeah.
And he goes into high schools for career days and says during career days to these juniors and seniors, look, you don't even have to graduate high school, get a GED. I'll pay for your commercial driving license school. I'll start you off at $75,000, including benefits. And there's no overnights. It's local, deliveries of lumber and trusses and shit like that. I'm like, if you would have showed up at my high school, I'd be a fucking truck driver right now. Like, I mean, you offer me $75,000, like I don't have to go to college. I don't have to do anything. And you start me at 75 for driving a freaking truck.
We'll absolutely get into that.
That's amazing.
We'll absolutely get into that because I think that is very, very imperative to what you're doing out there.
Yeah.
All right. Give me a moment of silence so I can find this on the feed, because the way it works for us, just so you know, and if you guys do want to know about StreamYard and what we're doing, how this is live, similar to what you did, like you had to like he had to open up a new window because we were having problems with the feed. If that happened, I'll have to go and like cut and paste, start a new feed, all that stuff. We stream it live like we're doing right now, which is a nice feature if you ever wanted to try that.
Right.
But if you don't, you can do record only, and then you can. I just download. It's a file that then I upload into what I use is just GarageBand for that part of it. But you can download the video feed or you can download just the audio, and then you can do whatever you guys do. But you have a little bit more flexibility. It's a good one. It's good program. Good.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 225, part 2, Beyond the BS. We are still joined by Patrick Adams. He is with ATF Lifestyle. We'll pick that of what the business that you're doing right now, if that works, and you can kind of branch off in what you're talking about. First part, if you guys haven't listened to part 1, if you're just now listening to part 2 on the audio, or if you're just tuning in live, definitely check out part 1. We talked about Yellow Rose Distillery, based out of Texas, Outlaw Bourbon whiskey. We reviewed that, talked a lot about that, talked a little about what Pat does as well. And we reviewed and talked about and smoked and enjoyed the Nub Habano from Oliva Cigars. So that's part 1. Part 2, I do want to mention as we get into this, the sponsors of the Bourbon and BS podcast, and that's going to be Altadis USA for the Monte Cristo Espada Oscuro that we're smoking right now. First part, the Nub Habano, was sponsored by Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. They carry the whole Nub line as far as the 4 core brands from them. So check them out. If you are not near a brick and mortar, definitely reach out through the podcast or directly to Tinderbox at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. And they typically ship about once a week. So definitely check them out. BS Cigar Company, the BS Gold and Silver are now available. Gold is by Plasencia. Silver is by Espinosa Cigars, blended with Brian and myself. That's the B and the S. And I want to thank you guys for the continued support, the patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. And also for those that have bought us bottles or just wanted to throw us a one-time contribution through Venmo at Bourbon and BS. And if you like what we're wearing, as I always say, like what you see on the screen. The pink shirt's not available because that is going to be a once-a-year release for breast cancer awareness. But the Pour One More, Light Up Another, we'll figure this out together. I've got the black and gray on. And there's several other shirts. Buyjack.com/Bourbon and BS if you guys want to rock those. I wore the When the World Hands You Some BS Lighted Up shirt today.
The 2020?
I gave out the website 3 times.
Oh.
Once was at Hotheads. I'm not kidding. Just wearing it like, what? I like that shirt. What is it?
It's for a cigar.
There you go.
It's for a cigar
I was
company.
like, oh, post office.
Oh.
Once was in the shop. One was at post office when I was mailing out packages, and once was at Hotheads.
Wow.
You know, they're fun shirts.
It's that walking billboard.
That's right. All right. So part 2 again is ATF Lifestyle. So I call him Pat. He goes by Patrick, but I didn't know that until tonight.
I go for hey you.
All right. So, hey, you. ATF Lifestyle is the brand on what we're actually really focusing on tonight, but there's a lot of history behind that. I met Pat years ago. We said 10 to 15 years ago. And when I met him, this is what I remember. Obviously, you know, someone that I related to, we were able to have great conversations about everything, much like it is with the cigar community. And he was here. Your family was still out in California, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was out there on an assignment. And ended up being about 1.5 years, 2 years. And our first child, who's now 11, my daughter, had just been born, and we just kind of made the family decision that it's better off that they stay at home, surrounded by family and friends, you know, to support network, and I go out and conquer the demons and head back home when I was able.
And with that, you know, all things considered, you were at the cigar shop because that was your family was across the country. You were taking in a sense, a sacrifice to provide and to grow the career plan and everything else, which has now transpired to what you're doing today. And it was something very cool because I had the opportunity to really get to know you. And you talked to me at the time about this idea. You were working for another publication at the time to grow and to kind of revitalize, if I'm not mistaken, what they were doing at that given moment. Yep. And you had talked about, you know, one of those, even though you were very successful in what you were doing in a sense, wouldn't it be nice? This is kind of what I want to do in the future. This is what I foresee is that at some point I want to be doing this for myself instead of helping other business companies, which is a dream for a lot of people. And so you reached out not too long ago, and we keep up through Facebook over the years, you know, like each other's photos and comment about things every once in a while. And you said, I finally did it. I said, you finally did what? And he sent me a link to this ATF magazine, the ATF Lifestyle. And the conversations have accelerated since then. And he knew that we were doing the podcast, Nate. And he said, well, I'm doing one as part of this whole project. And I told you about this. You tell me. You tell us.
Yeah, I mean, and even just take a step back, you know, I have to, you know, give you guys credit, give to, you know, Tinderbox Easton credit, you know, Brian, as well as yourself, that, you know, and just the cigar community at large. It's why I love and I'm so passionate about these things, you know, whether it be tobacco or firearms or alcohol. I mean, it's a similar environment. You know, there I was, right? I mean, my daughter had just been born, our first child. You know, I was remote, living in an apartment across the street. And you guys became my extended family that kind of kept me sane through this project, and sitting there in the shop on the weekends, you know, watching games, playing dominoes, getting to meet your regulars, and all of them becoming extended family, you know, provided so much more than just, you know, a way to kill the hours or boredom over weekends that I was stuck back in Columbus. You know, you guys became family, and it was, you know, the conversations and the time together was meaningful. It was more than just cursory conversations. So, you know, and I think that isn't necessarily unique to Columbus, Ohio, or the Tinderbox Easton or you guys. It's inherent throughout the cigar community, and honestly, it's inherent throughout the premium spirits line and firearms as well. You know, these are just good, grounded Americans that still care for, you know, their fellow brothers, and are interested in good conversations and sharing experiences. So I appreciate that. But yeah, to your point, you know, I spent my whole career, you know, kind of through different experiences, and a lot of those involve corporate America and 800-pound gorillas, and, you know, doing big things for big people and shareholders and boards and whatnot. And I kind of always had this vision of what the American dream meant to me. And that was, the freedom to do things my own way, to work as hard as I was willing to do, to create my own lifestyle, and have the freedom to create that based solely on what I was willing to risk and how hard I was willing to work. So, after I came back to California, after I left Ohio, I took another corporate job back in California. And I'll tell you, it was crazy. I got a random phone call one day from a business broker that I'd done business with, coincidentally, back in Ohio, for a very, very big acquisition deal that we had worked on. And he said, normally I wouldn't even answer the phone, but I just hated working in corporate America for suits and ties and all the politics and BS that goes along with it. And this broker said, hey, I'm just calling you because I know you're from the West Coast. I've got this little publishing company out there on the West Coast. I'm just doing a favor to the owner, putting it up for sale. It's 4 generations old. It's served this, backbone industry of America for almost 100 years. It's always been profitable. It's got no debt. It's a great audience, and it's up for sale. And I'm just, wondering whether or not you know anybody that might be interested in it. And, I have no idea why this happened, but I said, hang on a minute. I put him on hold. I called up my wife. Now, my wife, God bless her, she is, by a landslide, the better half of me. But
never met her, but I agree with you already.
Oh, it's a guarantee, right? Just by default.
He speaks highly of her.
But I'll tell you, she is very conservative. She is not impulsive. She is not a risk taker. I mean, she's the girl that takes 3 months to pick a paint color to paint the walls because, it's a high stakes decision. But I called her up and I said, look, honey, we literally have 30 seconds for this phone conversation because I've got a guy on hold, but there's a company for sale. It feels like a great opportunity. I have no idea what they're asking for it. I have less of an idea how we're going to come up with the money with buy it. But if we do, it'll be our business. We'll never have to relocate again, and we'll be able to set our own future based on what we're capable of doing. Right. What do you think? And divine intervention or just, a moment in time. She paused for a second and she said, the biggest companies in the world have been betting on you to solve their biggest problems. Isn't it about time that we bet on ourselves?
Love that.
Good line.
And so I said, all right. So I hope that she wasn't, midday drunk at the time, and I took her at her word.
I mean, you build her up, and then
she's
not listening anyway.
How many mimosas had she had that day?
she's never been midday drunk in her life. She's a good girl, but
so I called Southern California, and then
then it's on. But so I got back on the line, and I told him I'd buy it, and he said, I haven't even told you how much it is, and I said, I don't know. He said, how are you going to come up with the money? I said, I have no idea. Mm-hmm. So 9 banks later, I got someone to finally say yes. And we literally leveraged every single thing that we had. So everything that we had spent. Oh, my wife is listening. I'm in trouble.
That's why you got to be careful what you say on this podcast.
Yeah, she followed up with an emoji there. So
yeah. So we literally gambled everything that we'd spent over 20 years working to save and prepare for our future. Yeah. And if it wouldn't have worked, I mean, we literally would have been homeless. We wouldn't have had a shirt on our back. But it did work. We worked together on that, and we've built a nice little American dream story. We've been able to acquire other similar businesses like that in what we call infrastructure industries, full of great blue-collar, hardworking Americans that are vital to this country, turning on its lights and doing business every day. And now that we've got all that, we got the opportunity to look back on a conversation you and I had, well over a decade ago.
Yeah.
I still remembered it was after hours. You were vacuuming. I was emptying ashtrays, and
you did put in
and
the
I
work.
said,
I appreciate that.
Wait, Steve was
You know?
vacuuming?
Yeah,
back
for
then I
free.
was.
Yeah. He never even gave me a free cigar for it. But
But thanks for the free bottle of that, by the way.
But I told him about this, this
Yeah.
vision for a magazine that combined these different elements, and and they are a lifestyle, right? And a lot of people, they're hunting and they're fishing and they're truck driving, boot wearing Americans that enjoy these freedoms that going back to the founding of this country, there's been a lot of battles, both legal and physical, over these three things that are at the backbone of what makes America great. And so we, it's no relation to the Bureau that was created to regulate these
Right.
things and tax these things, but it's more about the lifestyle that includes these things.
Well, the
And
availability, right?
well, it's I think these three things are the ultimate representation of the freedom that makes America unique. And they're the things that are most oftenly targeted by other governments. And not getting political in this at all. I've got no comment other than I appreciate living in a country that has the freedoms for us to enjoy these things.
All right, so just a quick reference. We talked about the timeline for you and I meeting and talking about this stuff. That conversation, that phone call. Do you have a year, at least a ballpark timeline when you got that call, when you were already back in California and you called Shelly and you said, hey, this is what's going on, and you were very
2012.
Wow.
10 years.
Yeah.
Also, wow, that it's been 10 years since 2012. That is something that will never be less surprising. That time is moving on that quickly, and we're in 2022.
Thank God we haven't gotten older, right?
I mean, for you and I that have a very tight haircut, we do. I mean, I don't know about you, but like I get comments. I'm not say compliments that it's like, man, you haven't aged at all. It's like, have you looked at my beard? I had someone say that to me yesterday. When I met you, it was like, like 5 years ago, you haven't aged a bit. And I was like, I had less grays. Like, if you shaved your beard, maybe like you would still look the same. But it's interesting that we're talking about this. It is still a time where in this country and the rest of the world looking in. That's why I was actually commenting during the intermission about Ray, watching this. He's from the UK. He's lived here. He's lived in other countries. He's now living in Vietnam. And there is this perception where you're coming out with this ATF lifestyle. It's kind of like we were talking about with why people buy different bottles of whiskey, but why they buy, different cigars. There's interest, but with you being in that whole anymore, it's not just putting on a magazine, which is what you really, when I met you, that was the big bread and butter, even 10, 12 some years ago, is that was still at that point. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't have as many apps. I remember like the first apps really came out in like, I think 2008, 2009, and they were dog shit. You know what I mean? But now it's like you turn on your phone. If you even do that, you just wake up to your phone already on, and you already have a bunch of alerts from all the publications, whether it be local or apps that you're a part of. And now you're getting into this, that you have this ATF lifestyle. You're not trying to necessarily appeal to everyone, but if someone picked it up, and what I know of it so far, and we had this conversation because thank you for having me on your podcast, which is coming out this Friday. You have a podcast, you have online content. This is like an open type of it's a developing and a organic type of a concept.
Yeah.
You have your framework, what you want out of this. It's for people that enjoy all of, one of, two of, any of this stuff. Just like any other type of, in my opinion, without necessarily being a specialty, just a firearm, just a tobacco, just an alcohol publication / social media, you have online blogs, and we've talked about interviews, all this stuff. If, like, even Ray says the AT part of it's great. Even he, like, people that are interested in something, you might be able to get something from this.
Absolutely.
You're not.
Yeah, I think that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't. This isn't a divisive publication or media venture, right? Like, this isn't about right versus left. It isn't red versus blue. It's about America, and it's about the freedoms of America, and it isn't about the whatever it is, whether it's 1% or 10% that are on each extreme fringe that are screaming at each other.
Right.
It's about the 80% that are in the center, where we all say, if I asked anybody, what are the top 5 things that you'd be willing to die for? And you'd start listing things, right? Like your family, your friends, your country, God. We have all those things in common, and whether you like the A or you like the T or you like the F, or whether you're kind of on the fence about the F but you really like the A, it's still you can't be selective about freedom. You either have it or you don't, and all of these things are some of the most polarizing, fought about, talked about, debated things that, even you, Steve, I've known you for a long time, and I know you love the A and the T, and the F, you're not against, but you're not an enthusiast, and that's okay. But I promise you, if I took you on one of my hunting trips and we were camping out in the high country of Colorado, and we were each night preparing our meals out over a campfire, and we were smoking and we were drinking whiskey, and we're looking up at the stars, just enjoying the peace and the freedom of being in the open country. And we're going through the woods starting at 0400 before the sun even came up. No, you know what? Like, even if you saw an animal, you may not take a shot on it because it's not your thing.
Correct.
But I tell you, you would come back from that experience changed, and you come back thinking a little bit differently about the F when, after we did harvest game that first day, and we cooked that meal over an open fire from the game that we harvested and fought for and trudged through the open country all day, all night.
Correct.
We processed it in the field. We brought it back, and then I cooked it up that night for us after we were broken down and exhausted from hauling 250 pounds of meat out of the high country back to camp. You would think a little bit differently about the F.
I'm more of the Billy Crystal character in City Slickers, if you will, right? So
I took Steve to the range a couple years ago.
So I have no. So I it's interesting. We have some comments coming through. You know what I mean? Like, and I will. Let me put up 2 of these comments here, because firearm is obviously, especially in America right now, is the in-your-face type thing. Alcohol, tobacco.
Nobody's fighting against.
There are. I mean, tobacco is probably the biggest one, right? So now it's like the Biden administration is going after 2 things. They're going after the flavored and menthol stuff, right? I had someone today actually in the shop that comes in, works at a surrounding business, and he was buying some menthol cigarettes, and he had bought them at the same price for the last several months from us, because we don't change our prices until we're losing money, it's not a big seller for us. But he's like, everything's going up just like gas. I was like, well, we've had the same one. I said, but our government is trying to outlaw menthols in a sense, or prohibit menthol cigarette sales. And he said, well, that means I'll probably stop smoking. That was the first time I've actually heard that comment from someone. He literally, I'm not saying he thought it through, but it's like one of those things. I'm like, that makes sense. That's why they're trying to do it. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. There is that concept there. But I do want to put up a couple comments here from Ray. What we're talking about is, I think you can be selective about freedom, and should be followed up. And I think this is aimed towards the firearm side of it. Some people can't handle too much freedom. 100%. And I agree with that. going back to what I was saying with the firearm thing and what you were talking about is that, yeah, you're right. I don't own any guns. There was a time I had a firearm in the house. It was just for the uneasiness, and it was my decision, but it wasn't based on my request. I don't mind having a firearm in the house if it's of a certain nature, right? I did go to the firearms, or I went firing range with Nate more recently. The first time I went to a firing range was actually in Southern California, which was with Brandon Carse that you mentioned, and Prasan, who was the father, the patriarch of the Laotian family. We went to a firing range and shot handguns in Southern California. I would love to know how to do it if I needed it, right?
Yeah.
And I'd like to be prepared. That's the F side of it for me. I'd like to know, and Nate can contest that I'm not the worst shot in the world in a firing range. Under pressure, in a criminal situation, I still don't think that I don't care how trained you are in the clinical sense, if you will. If you don't have real life experience, you don't know. And I think that happens a lot of time. So I appreciate the availability legally and to have more regulations. I have no problem with that. I have no problem with knowing and training how to do that. And I think that's something that we as a country and a world could get behind to train better. I don't want to go back to the old, like the Wild West that you just like, which is kind of, not to get in that right versus left extremes. That's what we're dealing with. People that don't think at all. And you have people that just want to be you don't have a criminal record and you have a good credit score. You can have whatever you want. Like that's kind of where we're at state by state here. So that part I don't really like. The tobacco side of it, it's interesting because I do appreciate the fact we have an FDA so that we're not just like letting businesses kill the citizens. You know what I mean? Like there is a regulatory type of a process that if we're smoking something, there should be something, but it should be within reason. If you want to smoke a menthol cigarette and you know the risks, if they go to like the tobacco industries in the four major areas, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Honduras, and Nicaragua, and they certify those factories, that's one thing. If you just want to have $25,000 based on the size of a blend and you have to pay that money so they can test it, that's fuck off. Like that's my side of it. Same thing with the alcohol side of it. I don't want to go back to the days, and I think there's benefits there, where you have it's 1 year old, but it's dark brown. And the horror stories you heard back from the Wild West, the alcohol side, they were using tobacco spit. They were using rusty nails. They were using coloring. There is a value to some regulation of how you do this. The Bottle and Bond Act for the alcohol, making sure that the tobacco industry isn't just throwing asbestos in the cigarettes. You know what I mean? Like they're not just like doing this because they know they're going to get you fucked up on it. Firearms, same way. Don't just Wild West it. Have some regulation, but there is some value there. And talking about Ray's comments, I think there is something there that you're right. Some people, there's a lot of people, too many people, that the mental health thing is now out there, is that there should be some regulation, that not everyone should be walking around with firearms, knives, explosives, driving a car, for Christ's sake. You know what I mean? Driver's license shouldn't be, what's your vision like? Can you parallel park? It's, are you going to run this car into someone because you're pissed off that day? Or are you going to like, I'm not even talking about running into a building. I'm saying like someone cuts you off. Are you going to like, just like pit maneuver them?
Yeah. Right.
That's a thing.
So, it's, okay. So there's a lot to unpack there. And man, we came out of the gate at 100 miles an hour. So,
Part two.
So first, let me circle back. ATF is more about, it isn't about a political advocacy for or against any of these three things or anything that's related to it. I mean, it's about people that are interested or any one of or all three of these things are components of their life. It's about storytelling about the small and mid-sized companies in these industries, about the passion behind their brands, why they started these companies, and all of the challenges. Starting any business in any industry is an enormous challenge. And if you start an alcohol company, a tobacco company, or a firearms company in America today, you've got to be a borderline masochist, because not only do you face all the already business pressures of starting a business and trying to make it a success, but you're also fighting regulation and the government itself to continue to have a business.
The outside threats of your business are
enormous.
Very, very vast.
So this magazine is about promoting that American freedom by which you can pursue your American dream, even if it includes a business within these industries or something associated with these industries. So it's a storytelling and lifestyle magazine, and hopefully everybody, regardless of your personal belief about any one or all three of these things, you can appreciate hardworking Americans that are following their passion to do better for their families and their communities by engaging in their pursuit of the American dream. So I'll leave that there, and then I'll jump back to your horse race out of the gate. My personal opinion about it is, it's interesting to me that we have the freedom to be selective about our freedoms. So there's certainly plenty of people that believe, alcohol freedom is perfectly fine. Tobacco freedom, because we're cigar enthusiasts, we don't want cigars regulated, but those nasty cigarettes, if they want to clamp down on menthol, or they want to regulate the amount of nicotine, that's fine. But even if it gets to the point where you want to strip out our pretty bands and our pretty boxes and you want to just vanilla wrap them, hey, that's getting too far, infringing on my freedom. But then, when it comes to firearms, because I personally don't believe in firearms, hey, yeah, regulate the shit out of them. That's all good. I'm not here to say that what I believe should be the gospel. I think we should have the freedom to do that. And I agree with Ray in saying, there's people that can't be trusted. Well, you're right. There are also people that shouldn't be trusted with alcohol either, and get behind the fucking wheel of a car after downing 2.5 bottles of whiskey in a binger, and then, mowing down a 16-year-old coming home from his first date. But that shit happens too, but nobody's talking about over-regulation of that.
Absolutely.
When there's no less than 500 state and federal laws that are on the books that are violated with every homicide that's committed with a firearm.
Yeah.
And the point is that bad guys don't follow the fucking laws. So increasing regulation on anything only restricts the freedoms of free Americans, and it does nothing to stem the problem that you're trying to solve. So it's a bigger problem. If a psychopath walks into a school and mows down a bunch of elementary kids, that isn't a gun problem. That's a psychopath problem. And it's no different than the psychopaths that rent box vans in England and mow down crowds in the middle of a crowded tourist section, or takes machetes and mows down it's the same problem.
100%.
So
so Ray, again, Tim, thank you for commenting, and everyone else has commented on this, but same old argument. I want to throw that out there just for not putting gasoline on the fire here, but I want to put, I'm not, I'm looking at it as because that is something that again, when it's very polarized and singled out. I said this recently on a podcast. I might have said it on our interview. I don't know if it's on there or not, but I'm of the belief that, you know, mental health is now the overused jargon word that is going to pollute what's actually going on, because this whole mental health thing is, I agree, this fallback. It's very much real. But when you look at a magazine like yours, and maybe this is something, I'm not going to tell you how to run your publication, but it's something that I thought about after our interview and during this conversation tonight, is that it you know, because you and I have discussed, you know, how can I enhance from the background or in the forefront of the tobacco side of it. Maybe there is something there, that there is this whole bring it together of the reality of it. All of this is that it's not just the alcohol, the tobacco, the firearms, and highlighting that it's the you're already doing the people behind it and the personal side of it, right? That's what I love about what you're doing with this. It's not just highlighting like, oh, this is the gun of the month, this is the cigar of the month, this is the whiskey of the month. These are the people behind it. These are the stories behind it. That's what I love about this, is that there's not only the business, the stories, the people, it's the lifestyle behind it. And these aren't people. You're not interviewing. And I'm sorry for those out there that I'm sorry that they're the people, like, for the people that think this might be condescending. You're not interviewing people from people that are in prison, that have done things. You're interviewing people that are doing this in a debatably but arguably healthy way of doing this stuff. You know, we talked about that I think we talked about on the Monday we spoke, and I know I've spoke on this before, is I absolutely hate, and that is a strong word. I said that jokingly earlier. I hate it when people that are doing this in areas near me that are concealed carry, and they say that statement. I fucking hate it. It's not happening as much anymore, but when we first were able to conceal carry in Ohio, I wish they would. Fuck you.
You know me.
You are. I know it's not you.
I hate those kind of people too.
I'm
sure he does.
That is where it is borderline. Why do you wish they would? Why do you want to have this conversation? Like, do you really want to have this conversation? You wish they would. You wish they'd pull on you. You wish that they would do that. You wish that, you know, like, I know we're focusing on firearms because it is polarized, and I'm not saying that, but it's like, I wish we'd save the youth from drinking too early. I wish that we had the tobacco purchase age go from 18 to 21 in Columbus, then Ohio, and then nationwide. It's this whole argument of how old do you have to be to have a formed and mature mind to make sound decisions. And you go by the numbers. It's always the numbers. And I got to be honest, and I'm not promoting it. So
look, I love this discussion and this debate, right? And this is exactly why, you know, I love cigar people and I love the shop. And we used to get into a lot of these conversations, you know, just sitting in the shop, and I love them, and I can talk about them all night. You know, what I want to reinforce is that, you know, this isn't a political publication. This isn't an advocacy publication. This isn't a right-wing publication. You know, there's 450 million guns in America, and that pales in comparison to the amount of people that enjoy tobacco in some form of product, and certainly the number of people that enjoy alcohol in some capacity.
Right.
And you know, the point is, we have the freedom as Americans. We're Americans. We're all Americans, regardless of what side of the fence you choose to vote on or what your specific policies are. We all enjoy those freedoms. And the point is, the people who any one of these elements is a component of their lifestyle and the things that make their life better because they have the freedom to do so, those are the stories of this publication. We don't get into politics or policy or bills or lobbying or left or right or any of that crap. Now that said, I mean, we can burn the next 10 hours talking about, you know, the very interesting, lively debate about where the country's going and what, as a result, should be policy or lack thereof to contain this problem that we're having. But I just want to make sure that the conversation isn't reflective of what we're trying to do with this publication.
No,
Because
and I don't mean to do that by any means. I think that, you know, you have chosen, and again, I consider you a friend of mine, and I think that this is something that having you on this show and in part two is and something that you're going to deal with this part of it, because you're absolutely right when you spoke about this earlier, that a lot of the publications before the ATF was very aimed towards people that were working a profession, that were first responders. They were military, they were police, they were fire, and then all of a sudden that there is a common bond. A lot of those people that are in there, talk about the blue collar side of it, the American side of it, it is being brushed away at the moment.
One and that's it, right?
What's that?
I mean, that's it, right? Is, you know, we can debate the cause of the problem and the myriad of solutions that have been proposed and debated and discussed, you know, to solve the problems, you know, but at the end of the day, these things have been at the foundation of America since its inception. And you know, that's what I want to celebrate. That's what I want to talk about. And the fact that we can even have the debate, you know, in a public forum about what our personal beliefs are about any one of these three things, and everything else that goes along it, with, to me, is a win, because we still have that freedom to do so. But, you know, this is an adult publication.
Yes.
You know, it's for adults that have the free will to make the decisions about their life and what they want to stand for and how they want to live. But I can tell you, as a business, you know, we serve the industries of what we call first responders, which are all four branches of military, police, fire, TSA, Border Patrol, the building and construction industry, the transportation industry, which is air, rail, sea, road freight, as well as public utilities. So that's, you know, gas, oil, electric, you know, sewer, water, solar, winds, nuclear, whatnot. And you think about all the hardworking men and women that work in these industries, they're all thankless blue collar jobs. And they're not jobs anymore that are celebrated as the backbone of America. You know, I mean,
I love that. I was going to ask you, what term don't you hear that often anymore?
Well,
is the backbone.
Well, listen, you know, it's a tragedy, honestly, and it's. I will argue that, you know, part of the current debate and problem that we have is the decline of middle class America, and now you've got extremes. Well, you know, I mean, our education system has propagated white collar America. That, you know, from kindergarten, you know, kids are already preconditioned to believe that they have to go to college, they have to become doctors, they have to become lawyers, they have to become engineers, and there isn't ever a talk of becoming the best plumber.
So as someone, Pat, how old are you right now?
52.
52. I'm 41. Nate?
38.
38.
Just a
similar ages, right? Similar ages, in my opinion. That was a historical, in my opinion, of the U.S. in a lot of ways, because there was this whole thing, and globally there was that, but there was always this competition of the education system. But I will say, someone that, you know, for me, being kind of lower towards Nate, but, you know, still in the middle of the group here. And Sean, how old are you? 51. So
All right.
all right, you're in the 50 club.
Represent.
But you're absolutely right, because as someone that I was born in 1980 and I graduated high school in 98, my parents, both college graduates, there was this path determined. They were married in 1969. They already graduated college at that point. And there was this American dream shift of, if you go to school, public school, private school, whatever, I was public school, and it was college prep. It's becoming more exposed now. If you were going into the trade schools, you couldn't cut it, right?
Well, it was the ripcord, right?
At least in the suburbs. I was raised in the suburbs, so it's like one of those things. Like, if you couldn't cut it, you were public school, you lived in a suburb, you were doing the electrician, you were doing the plumbing, you were doing all that stuff. You were the ones that were going to be, and you're in Southern California. I mean, it was exemplified there even more. You were the help, if you will, to that. The other people were doing the things that were keeping the society, air quotes for they're listening on the audio, going and making money. Yeah, I mean, but it's like, if you needed to, if your toilet was clogged, you wouldn't even grab a plunger. You would literally call a plumber. That's the extreme I think it went to at some point. I do feel like we're getting back from that.
Yeah, I think it's presented as, you know, if you can't get the grades, you can't get the scholarship, you can't get into the, you know, the premier schools, you know, then you fail. So you're going to become a plumber, or you're going to build houses, or you're going to fix cars, or you're going to be an electrician. But, you know, the reality is America's built, has been built, and continues to survive on the backs of these people. And it used to be that these middle-class Americans were the backbone of America. And,
right.
And, you know, they used to be able to own a home, raise their children, and provide a better life for those children on that income. And it's getting increasingly harder because of this disparity and polarity of classes. And I think that, you know, it's one of the reasons why we're so honored to serve that population, because they're no longer celebrated. And
Absolutely.
Those trades aren't celebrated, but you know, you can still make a good income and still provide a good life for your family by being, you know, a truck driver or being a plumber. Like, one of the wealthiest people I know dropped out of high school and started a plumbing company. And this guy's killing it. But, you know, it's because nobody else wants to do it now, honestly. And, you know, it is still about American freedom. And in my eyes, I agree with Ray. I agree with everybody that, you know, freedom is one of those words that is conditional. Like, it isn't unconditional, right? I don't have the freedom to just walk down the road and, you know, kill somebody who pissed me off because they cut me off on the 405.
It's not lawless.
Right. It isn't the Wild West. But that said, you know, I think freedom is a slippery slope. And just because your personal beliefs, you know, are okay with restricting certain freedoms, you have to acknowledge that restricting certain freedoms sets the precedence to restrict other freedoms that you may actually enjoy and appreciate.
It's also a slippery slope.
Absolutely. So we're either a free nation where, you know, that should be a nation of law and order as well, that we should respect law and order, and we should, you know, and that's a mental health issue. It's a parental problem. It's a community problem. It's a freaking everything problem. But it isn't, drunk driving isn't an alcohol problem.
Right.
And I hear you, Ray. Oh, it's the same old argument. you're trying to apply driver's license to gun ownership, and you're trying to apply drunk driving to cars as much as gun violence is a gun problem. And like, yeah, I get it, but I also get it. You're not a gun guy, but you are an alcohol guy and you're a tobacco guy. So how about we outlaw cigars because 16-year-olds or 10-year-olds use vaping pens and get hooked on nicotine and cause brain damage. So we should outlaw all tobacco. Are you cool with that? No, of course not. That's stupid. That's illogical. That isn't the root of the problem.
Well, it's more illogical than stupid. I agree with that part. I know what you're saying. I mean, but it's illogical. I do want to hear from Nate. I know you've been sitting back in the background hearing all this stuff, and Nate is as we don't talk about it a whole lot on this podcast, but he's an A, he's a T, and he's an F guy. So this whole lifestyle, and again, I agree with what you're saying. I appreciate Pat. One of the reasons that I actually came out firing like that was because I'm not trying to go after your publication. I'm not trying to go after the political side of it. It was more just to hear, because again, and I apologize if it was a little aggressive, but it was like one of those things that I feel like I came at it from my personal side of it, which I like. To your point, you said way earlier that I don't have a problem with firearms,
right?
As a within reason, much like tobacco, much like alcohol. I didn't drink until I was 21. I knew people. I was friends with people. I was close with people that drank when they were 12.
Right.
So again, it goes back to that whole age thing or the regulation thing. It's like you can put all the regulations out there, but as soon as you prohibit it, there's still going to be problems. And now it's an education thing, right? So now it's all right. So I didn't drink or smoke until I was 21. And people were like, oh my God, really? Like I did. I was like 14 when I smoked my first cigarette. I was 12 when I had my first beer. I was this, I was taught how to shoot guns at 6. And it's like, cool. And here you are. You drink within moderation. You don't even smoke, and you own one firearm because you're an individual.
And that's exactly my point, Steve. And before we let Nate go, which I do want to hear Nate's perspective. Look, I'm not.
We lost your AirPods, so if you could,
I'm in no way.
We lost your AirPods, so we can't hear you as well. So if you could.
All right, I'll scoot forward. How's that?
You're real close. Do the dad thing, forehead to the screen there.
Yeah, just like that. Keep like that the rest of the.
No, you're good. You're good. We can hear you, just not as well.
So look, I'm not sitting here, crying for being attacked or anything else, because I deliberately named the magazine ATF because I knew that it would be controversial, right? It would get attention. I could have named it, Roses and Daisies and still covered the same things, but I want to have the discussion. I want people to have the discussion because I think at the end of the day, we have more in common than we don't. And as much as media and everything else has promoted pitting us against each other and fighting about these things, I think we still believe in more of the same things than we don't. And so as defensive as I get in it isn't defensive. It's just, I want you to understand what the foundation and motivation of the magazine is. And it isn't a right-wing advocacy magazine. No. But Nate, you are an ATF guy. So what are your thoughts on all this? I'm
going to interject one more time. The big thing about it is what I love about it was the freedom to talk about it and have an opinion about it.
Correct.
That is the biggest part of it. And going back to Ray's comments and a lot of people that might listen to this is that, it is exactly that, is that the greatest part, for better or worse, depending on what side you're on or where you're at in the world, you talk about the American side. The U.S. side of it is the American side is that you're okay to have an opinion on it. That is the core of where we're at on this, contrary to popular belief. But you can have an opinion on it, and it could be legal, it could be illegal, it could be in the works of it. You can be on the opposite of the majority. But the biggest thing that I feel as though that we are losing in this country is the fact that you can have an opinion and how you handle your interactions with the people around you. That's my biggest thing. I've said this countless times, is that the fact that some people are more concerned about their beliefs and opinions, which I'm not saying you're wrong,
Right.
than your household, the people that you hold dear and true, your children, the people you do business with, but you hold things that you hold strangers more in a higher level of importance than you do the people that you already cared about, but you disagree on one issue, and now all of a sudden it's like, fuck you, I'll never talk to you again. That's the disconnect. Because in this country, the lucky part still is that you can have a different opinion, but you don't necessarily have to lash out, and people that have different opinions from you don't need to lash out towards you. You can have actual conversations instead of talk at people. All right, Nate, I'm sorry.
Hey, welcome to the
Tom
show,
anymore.
Nate.
Pat, go ahead. No, I'm just kidding. Sean, you have anything? Anyone else out there? No. Jesus,
Nate.
I feel so sorry.
Nate, say something.
Nice shirt
please.
you have on.
Oh, thanks.
Jesus.
Christ.
No, I mean,
I'm gonna go outside.
okay. You're not that far away. It's practically outside right now in this garage. The door's open. No, my biggest thing with, every aspect of the AT and F, something I learned very early on is it really comes down to responsibility in all three of these areas.
Mm-hmm.
On the alcohol side in the United States, you can't legally purchase alcohol until you're 21, which of all first world countries, that's the highest age that there is. There are some European countries that the drinking age is 14.
Right.
There are certain reasons and studies that we don't do that. It's 21. It's about a responsibility aspect to it, to the alcohol, to the tobacco, to the firearms. Premium cigars that we enjoy. Like the Tinderbox. Us sitting here smoking cigars. The FDA wants to pretend like these are marketed towards 10-year-olds, and that's not. That's not the case. There's a responsibility. This is a luxury item.
Some things are, and they were in the past, but this is not one of them.
This is alcohols. You can't have. I was thinking back when you guys were talking years ago when in Ohio they changed the DUI threshold from 0.1 to 0.08.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't decrease cases of DUI. It actually increased them because people that were 0.08 or 0.09, now they're committing a crime, whereas before they weren't.
And
it's
now,
still an aspect of, are you behind the wheel responsibly? That's the point that they're trying to get with some of those regulations, is the responsibility aspect of it.
and now we have more availability, by the way, that just based on where we went, that you can get a safe ride. Not only calling a friend, calling a family member, calling a taxi. Now you have Uber, you have Lyft, you have shared rides, you have all this stuff, right? You know what I mean? Like there are these other things that part of it. So there is some benefit that someone that sadly enough can drive home safely way above the limit, and someone that can have one drink and be distracted and cause an accident. I don't think it's always a bad thing, as long as there is alternatives to it.
I get you.
Which is where we're at. Sorry.
No, I mean, I was
representing the bourbon and BS side of it, drinking and smoking, and same thing with firearms. You can have one firearm, you can have like 20 firearms, and like it's that person.
Yeah, it comes down to a personal responsibility in each one of these.
Mm-hmm.
The person who doesn't drink, the person who drinks a shit ton, but they don't get behind the wheel of a car, like that's still someone who's acting responsible. You talked about you didn't drink till you were 21. I didn't drink until the day before I graduated college, because growing up in high school, like I actually wrote an essay for a scholarship grant about why I was never going to drink. And that was because I had family members that were very irresponsible when it came to alcohol. And so I didn't want to be like them. And it wasn't until I was older and I learned, my own personal responsibility to be able to, have the freedom to have a couple glasses of whiskey, as long as I do it responsibly and I'm not a danger to other people.
Right. Or yourself.
Or myself,
Yeah.
From the firearm side of it. And it's funny that, when you mentioned it, I was taught how to shoot when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
My dad
talking about you.
My dad took me shooting. My dad took me hunting. I got, kind of like the story that Pat was giving an example with, taking you hunt. Like if he took you out hunting and, you went out, killed something, brought it back and cooked it up. That's the kind of stuff I did when I was a kid. When my dad and I would go down to Kentucky, we were on family land and we would go hunting early in the morning. And what we shot is what we ate that night.
Yeah.
But there was a bonding experience with that, being out, just me and my dad out in the woods, that trip away from the city, away from away from TVs, away from, it was a little bit before cell phones, but
say, it's not as much technology as today. You are old enough that there's not as much where you're getting alerts and stuff.
Well, not back then.
Yeah.
But
a whole lot of blogs back then.
But it still was still a personal responsibility thing. My dad had a gun cabinet, but I also knew I was never allowed to go into that cabinet.
Correct.
But that's because my dad, taught me how to respect firearms. There was one time we were in Kentucky and we were going around hunting for copperhead snakes. And at one point after we got
hunting for copperhead snakes,
we were just,
that's a whole different story. Holy shit.
we were just,
what are you going to do
when
just to get rid of them. We were just
Just-
getting getting them off the property is
So
is
just
what we
as
were
a
going.
Side note, when is copperhead hunting season in Kentucky exactly?
Down in Kentucky, there is no season. It's open
Yeah.
game on them sons of
open
bitches.
season?
Jeez. Kind of like
Good question, though, Pat.
kind of like coyotes here in Ohio. There is no season. But I remember vividly, it was me, my dad, and my uncle, and we had been shooting pop cans, and at one point we piled up the cans, and my uncle took a 12 gauge and from the hip shot at those pop cans. And it just, the buckshot at that distance didn't really spread much. So it literally just left this rut in the ground.
Mhm.
It looked like someone did a burnout with a dirt bike in the grass.
Yeah.
And we sat there and we looked at it. And all of a sudden my dad goes, "Can you imagine if that was a person?" And the purpose of him saying that was to get the idea
Education.
that, it's something that's unforgivable. When you pull that trigger, there's no forgiveness. What comes out of that, you can't change once you pull that trigger. You can't change what happens. So, and so I learned from a very young age the responsibility that comes with the freedom of enjoying, that aspect of ATF lifestyle. And so when I became older and was able to then purchase my own firearm, went through training to get a concealed handgun license in the state of Ohio, which, now that we have constitutional carry, I still think everyone who's going to carry should go through some sort of training.
Correct.
Because what you don't want is like,
that was
and
my point of bringing that up. Going the opposite way of like overcorrecting in a sense, where it's like now anyone can just carry.
Well, and there were people actually in my
same thing with anyone can smoke, anyone can drink. Like you can't overcorrect and just go the other way on any of this stuff.
Well, yeah, and there were people in our class that were kind of the people that you talked about, Steve. There's actually a term.
I wish they would.
I wish a motherfucker would. That's a term in the firearm industry, is those people. And people who are firearm advocates also hate those kinds of people.
Absolutely.
People that are not firearm, people that are anti-firearm hate those kind of people. Like, there's an agreement there, like, because if you're someone who is a firearms enthusiast, you can go through all the training you want, but until you actually have to use that firearm in a defensive situation, you don't know what it's going to be like. And when you have to use that for that situation, it will fuck with your head.
So what I like about the ATF magazine, what you're doing, to go back to that, and also incorporate what you're talking about and what we've been talking about, is Pat, you have an opportunity there, and I think that's where you're going with it. And correct me if I'm wrong. Is that not only are you bringing identity and stories and the typical stuff that is going to make people want to read about it, that are already enthusiasts. So you have that side of it, right? So it's like, if you already drink whiskey, you drink spirits, you never knew about Yellow Rose Distillery. Cool story. They're already enthusiasts about it. You're not preaching to people that are drinking a fifth and then driving home, from the bar, right? Same thing with tobacco. You're not necessarily, like, condoning the fact that it's like, hey, you need to smoke like 2 packs of cigarettes a day. You need to smoke 8 cigars a day so you can be cool about it. Firearms. I don't want to see how many gun safes you have in your house. It's about the education of it. What you're talking about is, I love that where your dad said, what if it was a person?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a conscious level of knowledge and responsibility. And what I know about and you're shaking your head, maybe I'm wrong here, is that
no, you're
the knowledge of what you're promoting, and you are promoting these ATF lifestyle, is it can be easily misconstrued. I'm watching these pictures come up behind you, Matt Booth, right? So it's like you have Matt Booth holding a cigar, then you have Matt Booth holding a firearm, then you have Matt Booth. If that's sitting on a magazine stand, just like we're talking about, like the whiskey bottles or the cigars in a shop, you have people walk in and you're like, well, that's not for me, because you have Matt Booth, long hair, experienced military guy. They don't know who he is, but you look at him now. Back in the day, he had spiked hair. Now he has long hair, and it's Matt Booth.
Right.
I've been fortunate enough. You've been fortunate enough to meet Matt Booth. You have not met. People that have met Matt Booth, I see him on a magazine. I'm like, ATF, like, yeah, that makes sense. Let me grab.
But he's also the kindest, gentlest, most generous guy you'd ever meet.
But that's who I know. That's where, like, people walking down that, they see ATF, they're like, and you're right, not to get political. It's not even political. It's like, I don't like firearms. I got Matt Booth holding, like, I've been watching it behind you. He's holding a firearm. It's like, also, that guy is a cigar brand manager. He's also a jewelry designer. He's also a military guy. And I'm not going to say what rank, but he's a military guy that, if you know him, he'll talk about it briefly. But if you buy that magazine, he's going to talk about it and give you a whole lot more. That, move over real quick, Pat.
Other way.
That's the guy that, if I see ATF and I see him, I know that's the next one where I'm like, all right, well, certain people aren't going to buy that magazine cover.
Right.
But the last one or the next one, it's so polarized right now that you don't know how to, like, how do you get that kind of.
See, that's exactly the beauty of my point behind the publication, is that, like, Matt, right? I mean, seriously,
I know him well enough. We're not friends. I mean, I can text him or whatever if I wanted to, but
but he wears his heart on his sleeve, right? And,
yep.
And, just like Nate sitting next to you, I mean, and just because we've chosen firearms as the polarizing thing, like I can promise everybody here that if there was truly a gun problem in America, the problem couldn't be solved by the U.S. military itself. I mean, there's over 450 million guns in America that are just known about. If there was a gun problem, like, this would make the Wild West look like, Disneyland. That by far and large, the majority of America are responsible in their freedoms in alcohol, in tobacco, and in firearms. And the problem is that, the media has hyped the 1% of outliers that choose to abuse those freedoms and make it appear as though it's a widespread epidemic, and created a polarizing situation. The reality is that the majority of us are responsible in all of our freedoms. We respect the freedoms. We respect the blood that has been shared to defend those freedoms and make America what it is. And that's the point behind the magazine, is to open up a respectful cigar shop like dialogue, to openly discuss these things, tell you that the humans, the Americans behind these companies, the guys behind firearm companies, they're not these evil guys that are looking to create mayhem in the world. I mean, they're hardworking Americans, and it's the same with alcohol. Any more than Yellow Rose is in some way responsible for drunk driver carnage. It's just not the case. And the point is to tell the stories behind these people pursuing their freedoms.
I'm gonna go in real quick, all right. So I'm not trying to prolong this podcast, but I will throw up Ray's comment here, and this is I'm gonna get in here. He says, "Wow, so 19 dead kids is an outline issue." No, I am of the opinion, and Ray, I love you, and if you never want to talk to me again, that's fine. It's not fine, but it is what it is. That's a major issue.
Absolutely.
Major issue. Now, I will say also, I drink sometimes more than I should, and I have made some poor comments. Luckily, I've made some poor decisions driving. To the fact that I wake up in the morning. I'm not talking about just podcast nights. I'm talking about just the fact that I'm by myself and we have information at our fingertips. And I say things in my past, and I feel like not all of us have, but some of us have. And I think a majority of us have, that we're not ourselves sometimes when we drink. I'm also not one to say that we should not allow alcohol in this country. So he says that. And I am someone that I lost a friend of mine that the reason I'm a part of in the Columbus area, it's small and none of us have time to really dedicate ourselves to it, but it's called Safe Ride LLC. It's more of it's more annoying come tax time that I have to do a K1 and all this stuff because I'm a quarter partner of Safe Ride. But we do this because there's 3 bar owners and myself that I was roped into it because, and it just came up on Facebook Memories, by the way, that Vince Kazani was hit by a drunk. You know about that story.
I do. I was out there. So I knew
Vince Kazani was hit by a drunk driver. That younger guy, he drank too much. He went on the wrong way on an interstate and struck several people, killed one person that I was actually spending time with literally hours before he passed away.
Yep, me too.
So my viewpoint is yes, easy answer, not easy, but the easiest answer in my mind is let's prohibit alcohol. That would have prevented him dying. However, I'm of the opinion that my friend Vince would not have passed away that night if that individual, and I know his name, I'm not going to share it, but he served his time and he's dedicated his life to talk about this stuff, is that if there was someone else there, if someone else would have been working with him, if people knew about his problems, if he didn't make that mistake that night. I'm not equating this to
the school shooting. No,
school shooting.
I mean,
My point is that there are tools out there, no matter what it is, and outlawing the surface level part of it is not going to fix the situation. And to that point, I will say that we all have our demons. We all have our bad nights. And I will venture to guess that we've all had at least one moment that we are fortunate enough to have gotten through that we did not cause a bigger issue than we probably could have, whether it be alcohol, firearms, tobacco, just a bad night, a heartbreak, a lost job, that you gave up on everything. That at some point, if you would have had a better head on your shoulders, or you had a better support system, you may have made a different decision. And luckily,
yeah,
go ahead, Pat.
I don't disagree with you, Steve.
I'm not saying that people make mistakes. I'm not saying that people don't they overindulge in any of this stuff. But I will say that people that respect alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and just the fact that you can overindulge within reason, the best case scenario is that you offended someone that you hold close. Worst case scenario is that you took it out on the rest of the world. And that's where, and again, I'm not trying to make it about mental health, but it's about the education side of it. So someone that is struggling, the bottle's not in front of them.
So look,
tobacco's not the same thing, but like it's the firearm side of it.
So
Go
look,
ahead.
I'm gonna.
You know where I'm going with this.
I do, and you know the issue at hand, which to Ray's point, I don't think. While I do present them all as freedoms of America, you know, it isn't fair to put firearms in the same capacity as alcohol and tobacco, even though alcohol, you know, it causes plenty of deaths and mayhem and family destruction and everything else, right? And including Vince, who we both knew, and we were both at the shop that night before he left late and died on the freeway going home. You know, firearms are in a different capacity, and Ray, I completely agree with that. And you know, I've met you, I respect you, and I think it's a bullshit, easy debate, you know, point to say, so what? You know, 19 kids' lives don't matter. There isn't a responsible gun owner in America. There isn't a law enforcement officer in America. There isn't a military, you know, veteran in America who isn't disgusted by what happened at the hands of a fucking terrorist who chose to victimize a bunch of innocent kids using a weapon. Okay? But to immediately jump to this ideal that you think that somehow you're going to set a new law that outlaws guns, and that's going to solve the mental health problem that created the fucking terrorists who thought that it was all right to kill a bunch of innocent kids, is the solution to this problem. Like, you know, that's lazy, and it isn't intelligent, because he already broke a million fucking laws in doing what he did. And so I agree. I actually agree with you that, you know, if I don't have a problem with logical, intelligent policy and regulation over things that can cause mayhem. I think that cars, you know, that people should prove they're competent and capable of driving cars. I think that once they prove that they're irresponsible with that right, those rights should be restricted. And in the same way as firearms, you know, I agree with the same thing, and every gun owner in America believes the same thing. In spite of what the media portrays these extreme fringes to portray, that it should just be this unconditional Wild West where you could walk into a fucking Walmart, buy 20 guns, and not have to even show an ID. That isn't realistic, and no true American believes that should be the case. But there's
the Wild West actually really pushed forward the laws of what was happening.
Absolutely.
You can't just go around doing that in an argument. So now you look back at that stuff, and I'm not talking about just the movies, but it's like as soon as there were laws that caught up to what was happening in the Wild West, if you will, in this country, when there weren't laws, that everyone was open carry, everyone was doing this stuff. They were all just doing what they wanted to do. And I think that I'm not trying to take away the alcohol and tobacco side of it. Is that I was the first one in this podcast to say, I don't want people drinking something that is filled with rusty nail or tobacco spit. Yeah. I don't want
motor oil.
I don't want to be smoking something that I trusted these companies. I looked them face to face, and I find out that they are putting additives into it, which is the cigarette industry. That it's like, you're just trying to do this stuff. Fuck you. I don't want to do it. Same thing with the guns. I don't want to say all of this stuff is it's not, to Ray's point, it's pointless to argue about it, because sometimes it is a roundabout on this stuff, but there is a value of checks and balances, which, whether it be alcohol, bottle and bond, and federal agencies looking into it, tobacco, not the way they were trying to do it with the Tobacco Act of 2009, when Obama, the administration, was trying to go after cigarettes, and he exempted, which we didn't talk about tonight, the cigars, the pipe tobacco. Vapes weren't a thing. And then all of a sudden, before the Democratic Party saw they were losing in this country, which is not what we're talking about, but they went after it. And the omnibus budget bill is that they went after the vapes. And they went after the vapes, the premium cigars, and the pipe tobacco, because vapes weren't paying taxes and no one knew what the fuck they were putting into it. So it was to your point, Pat, I agree. It's a easy/lazy, because there's no other way, because they couldn't get it through. It's not about the fact that it was lazy. They couldn't get it through if they went after it just by itself. But in this country, marijuana is getting legalized across the board with no studies based on addiction and everything else. Gateway drug. That was a gateway drug at some point. It still is. The whole thing about it is you can dip, you can do all that stuff, but now you're going to get taxed on it. The biggest thing now is that it is very easy. It's all about how do you get it through the legislation on this stuff.
But also, where's the control and regulation for the potency and the quality and the additives that are being added to these marijuana products?
It's hot terms. Right now, it's the same thing. Now I saw it recently this week. The biggest thing is that they're going after nicotine levels.
Right.
You know what they're not going after? Caffeine, sugar. You can drink fucking 4 Monsters a day, but if you don't drink 18 5-hour energies, you're not on the radar.
No. Look,
thing.
We're a country of law and order. I am a huge proponent of let's figure out a way to more vigorously enforce the laws that are on the books, and come up with even more common sense laws to regulate things in a logical manner to prohibit misuse, but without restricting the freedoms of responsible Americans. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, if somebody convinced me there was a way to round up every single gun in America, absolutely, without question, I'd be the first one in line. I mean, if we went back to the old school days of, hey, let's get a baseball bat or get into a fist fight, and I knew that was my worst threat walking out the door, man, sign me up, giddy up. But until that day happens, that's not realistic, because bad guys are always going to break the law. And thankfully, good guys still outweigh bad guys. And that's the unfortunate reality that we face. So, I just think we need to have more cigar shop talk about
where we're at
these
here.
things. And that's what I'm about, right? I don't think everybody should own a firearm. I don't think everybody should just be able to walk in and buy one. I don't think everybody should have unconditional use to just willy-nilly do whatever the fuck they want with it. And thankfully, that's still not the case as a parallel even to alcohol. There's far more abuse and misuse of laws and regulation of alcohol than there are firearms right now. And there's far more deaths associated with it. But, I think if there's a way to stop Vince from dying on his way home from the shop, and there was a logical law to be able to restrict that without restricting the freedoms of all the people who don't abuse, then, man, fucking sign me up. I'm all for it.
All right, so here we are, rounding out part 2. And Nate, I'm gonna turn to you first. No, because I brought up Vince, and I'm not really. I mean, I'm emotional about that, but it is something that we talk about all this stuff, and I ideally walking into this, I wanted to learn more about ATF, and I feel like we didn't do enough about this, so that's why I want to hopefully have a follow up as you get into this, Pat. And you can have Matt on, you can have whoever this is an outlet that will promote hopefully the ATF thing, and if you and I still work together and get a bit of a thing going with that, and if we don't, the great part is that I've learned that 4 p.m. on a Wednesday is open for you. So to a point, you have no idea that when we canceled last week because of the power outage, he's like, I have next week, and I have also August 18th open, and then I have October open. I'm like, all right, next week it is. He's not open. He's a very busy individual, and I appreciate your time, Pat. But Nate, I'm going to start with you on closing remarks. Then I'm going to go to Pat. Then I'll finish it out. So I want to hear from you guys.
So to tie in for my closing remarks, with all 3 aspects of this level of personal responsibility, because there's no, with the situation you brought up with your old buddy Vince, there's no one quick fix solution that would have prevented it. To Pat's point, you can pass all the laws you want. There's still going to be people that go out there and break the law. It doesn't matter. You can sit there and say, you're going to get a DUI if you get stopped and you have anything more than 0.00 in your system. That's not going to stop people from going to the bar, having a couple beers, and then driving home. Those aren't necessarily the people you're worried about. You're worried about the people that are going out having 10 beers and then trying to drive home, or they're going out and
trying to rationalize them about taking a safe ride home.
Yeah. You need to, teach responsibility and safer alternatives. That's one of the great things like AAA does every year for New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
If you're out at a bar on New Year's Eve and you have too much to drink, you can call AAA and they will tow your car home. Or, companies like Uber or Safe Ride or Lyft, like they do discounts or whatever on.
Yep.
Why do they do that?
You.
Because they want people to have a good time, to enjoy, that aspect of the occasion, but also do it responsibly.
Right.
And if you can't do it responsibly, we're going to provide opportunities for you to not put other people in danger. When it comes to all these, we all have our own personal responsibility to do what's right. No one on this podcast, yes, we're a bourbon and cigar podcast. The Tinderbox does not advocate selling cigars to 10-year-olds. We had an underage kid try and come into the shop a couple weeks ago and try and buy a cigar, and I kicked his ass out of the shop. Why? Because
you asked him to leave.
I told him he had to leave. Because he tried.
A few years,
he tried to use his school ID to buy a cigar. Like, no, get out. That's not what we're about. Would we like to sell cigars and make a lot of money for the shop? Absolutely. But we're also going to do it responsibly. We're not going to sell to people we're not allowed to sell to. Same thing with alcohol. We're a bourbon podcast, but we're not advocating that people go out to a bar, drink, or go home, drink half a bottle of whiskey, and then go drive around the freeways. Like, no, we're not advocating that whatsoever. What we advocate, and what I think you advocate with the magazine, ATF Lifestyle. Enjoy these freedoms that we have. We have the freedom to enjoy alcohol. We have the freedom to enjoy tobacco. We have the freedom to enjoy firearms. But with that freedom also comes the responsibility to enjoy them responsibly and not put our own life or the lives of other people in danger with that. And like you said, there are more with each one of these, there are more responsible people than irresponsible people that abide by all three of these. But unfortunately, the responsible people get lumped in with the irresponsible people. But no one necessarily takes into account the responsible people. They just try and fuck it up for everybody. So it all comes down to a personal responsibility and a personal advocacy for each of these. Like, we're not just advocating for people to enjoy these irresponsibly. We're advocating for people to enjoy them in a responsible manner.
Yep. 100%. Well said, Nate. So look, Ray, I appreciate the comments actually. And Tim, thank you for the kind words. And, mine also is a story of the American dream. Look, I grew up poor. I grew up in an abusive household in a horrible area of America, full of violence and crime. But through the freedoms of America and through hard work, and with my wife, I mean, we've been able to build a life.
I do want to meet Shelly. I do want to meet Shelly because I'm super.
She's by far better than me. Ray would even like Shelly.
I'm on a Facebook friend her. I'm not trying to be weird, but I'm a Facebook friend her. I've only seen her in your pictures, and
she might like you better than me, actually. But
yeah, but I'm too far. I'm too far.
But it's what I appreciate about the shop and what I appreciate about this podcast and everything else is, without the freedoms of America, I never would have been able to better the life that was dealt to me as a child. And because of those freedoms, I was able to do that. But with that freedom comes responsibility. And by far and large, the majority of Americans do enjoy those freedoms responsibly. And that's what this magazine is about, is about sharing those stories, because the media today isn't sharing those stories. The media would have you believe that it's the wild fucking West, and that everybody who buys a gun, if they haven't already, they're just planning on going in and creating mayhem with it, or alcohol or tobacco. And that we have to trust all these old geezers in Washington that if they were our grandparents, we wouldn't trust them with the car keys, but somehow we trust them with our freedom and our rights to set new laws to govern us from our freedom, right? Because surely we can't be trusted with that.
Yeah.
So we've got to trust them. And the reality just is that the majority of America isn't in that position and doesn't appreciate that. And those are the discussions that we always had in the shop. Those are the discussions that I know we have here. And even though, Ray and I disagree maybe on one of the three, it doesn't change the fact that I think we love this country and we love everything that it's afforded to us. And that we also celebrate the people that have built better lives responsibly through whatever it is, the profession that they've chosen to do. And to Tim's point, yeah, Tim, Mike is a huge hero of mine, and I'd love to have him in the magazine because I do think as a country we need to get back to celebrating blue collar jobs in America, because the lights wouldn't be on without those guys out there working. And honestly, the blue collar jobs, the first responders are the only things that stand between us and the mayhem.
Well, I gotta say, you guys have been very impactful. I'm not just talking about Pat and Nate and Sean, who was here earlier. He had to go because he has to work in the morning. But Ray, Tim, Sean, all the other people out there listening. Sorry I didn't get to all your comments. It's very impactful what Nate said, what Pat said, because that is absolutely where we're at. I look at it as like it's easy to really pigeonhole or to call out certain aspects of it. In the reference of the ATF lifestyle, it's easy to defend certain things that are important to you, for better or worse. Like people that drink casually, people that drink too much, they're going to defend that. For people that smoke cigarettes, they dip. Right now it's the nicotine level. They're all about that. Like, cigars, all that stuff. I don't know the nicotine level of the cigars I enjoy. I'm in the business for almost 10 years, and I talk the terms that you're not supposed to talk about: the mild, the medium, the full. You're not supposed to say that anymore. I don't even know, because someone that's in the industry, I don't even know how to talk about that. Light, I can't say that. Mild, I can't say that. Strong, can't say that.
Well,
full, I can't say that.
There was a person years ago that we tried to get on the podcast who was a cigar rep.
Yeah,
and they couldn't be on the podcast because there were certain.
And what happened with that company?
That company doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
But no, they couldn't be on the podcast because they couldn't say things like light.
I look at that the same thing that we're dealing with the firearm side of it. It's like, yeah, well, we're only going after certain firearms. Like, that's not the argument that we're trying to have. That's not the battle that you want to have. I look at it as like it's the education. I love the ATF Lifestyle Magazine because, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up a Pat's. Do you have a skirt on or?
Sure.
It's a kilt.
It's plaid. It's plaid.
Look, what I'm looking at is the fact that we're talking about it as like human beings. We're not getting, like, to your point, Pat, we're not, you don't want to get into like the right, the left, the genders, the political side of it. It's not that. It's literally, it's like, I don't care what the argument is. The alcohol. Let's dive down into that. Close your marks. Alcohol side of it. Do you enjoy having a drink?
Yes.
Yes. A lot of people out there listening.
I thought that was rhetorical.
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's not rhetorical. Do you like the fact that when you wake up in the morning, you don't remember what you said the night before when you went to bed?
I've never had that happen, but I would absolutely hate it if I did.
Pat? You had a good night?
I'm not sure the correct way to answer that without getting in trouble.
It's fair. I've had good experience with that. I've had negative experience with that. The tobacco side, I've never had that. You know, it doesn't alter your viewpoint.
No, but equally with the tobacco side, they would argue that we're killing ourselves.
There's an argument for that. Yes, there is.
Right?
Yes, and I, you know, and to that point, there are health risks on all of us. If we didn't smoke cigars, that's something you could take out. I'm not trying to belittle the fact that, you know, that all three of us and anyone else listening, that you if you didn't smoke cigars, you won't die from cancer of this regard. Not true. In a sense that you could.
Sure.
Because we don't understand that.
Right.
I'm not condoning drinking or smoking. But if you do that, what we have done on this podcast, and we've had several conversations, that it's the other aspects of life, that if you want to take that out of your scenario, that's fine. But also don't eat like shit and don't not exercise. Like, take your vitamins, do those things that are important to you. Get out there, walk, do those things. Those are things that are more proven, in my opinion, from my vantage point, that are more proven that you will live longer and more successful and less stress-free than if all my argument is that I relax by smoking cigars. Well, you're a fat fuck, so you're gonna have diabetes and you're gonna do all that shit. Like, it's not a pick or choose thing, right?
Well, one of the things you've advocated,
But I'm that person that I am unhealthy as shit, but I have guns. So if anyone comes to me, it's like, I gotta be honest with you, man. Someone comes into your house, you're gonna be so asleep because you are in this like sugar diabetic issue that they're gonna shoot you in the fucking head before you can actually wake up and actually defend yourself. No, I have like fucking like I have guns under my pillow. I have this. You're gonna be so passed out because you finally fell asleep.
100%.
Go like you're fucking dead and everything's gone from your house. They don't even know who came to you. I'm not promoting any of this stuff, but the biggest thing is that ATF Lifestyle is the respect, the education, you, Nate, and Pat, and we've talked about it, that you gain from that, whether it be from your parents or whether it be from a magazine or a publication, is if you're interested. Here's the biggest obstacle that I feel like we have for people is, how do you not glorify those aspects? How do you educate people that this is a lifestyle, which is what you're doing, Pat? This is a lifestyle of a well-rounded individual.
Well,
and
look,
now
I think it's through storytelling, Steve. You know,
I know that's what you're doing. You're right.
So look, you know, like it's I love this country. I love everything this country stands for and the freedoms that go along with it. And you know, just like my own kids, you know, they have the freedom to be good kids. They have the freedom to be bad kids. And when they're bad kids, they get punished. And hopefully they learn from that, and it keeps them from doing really bad things when they get older, right? I mean, that's called parenting, and that's called responsibility, and it's called freedom. And, you know, like if you look at our first issue, and in some of the interviews that we do when we're releasing the first issue coming July 4th, you know, we interview true American heroes. You know, I mean, we've got a gentleman named Dan Brokos who served 26 years in Special Forces. 26 years in Special Forces. You know, Tim Kennedy, Tu Lamb, Jocko Willink. I mean, these guys are fucking American heroes that them and their friends have spilled blood to defend our freedoms. And guess what? If you talk to them and you ask them, you know, like, what do you think about, you know, gay marriage? What do you think about, you know, this policy or that policy or whatever? You know what all their responses are? And you would think these guys are like hardcore gun nuts and hardcore everything. You know what they say? Their response is, you know what? That's the freedom that we fought to defend.
So that's my point, is that it's great to be at the level we're at if you don't overcorrect, if you realize that what got us to this point, we can grow off of that. The issue that I have is that we need, everything you said was very, very impactful, but I love Jocko. I love Andy Frisella. You know, I know you know that who that is. People that are really pushing the envelope, which shouldn't be pushing the envelope, but it's in a sense that it's consistently to a point that people can take it from a political side of it, but it's not. It's reality.
But also to your point, Steve, you know, and you live this life as much as I do, right? Is that it's about trying to become your best self as an American, and you know that's working out, that's being healthy. It's trying to learn. It's trying to broaden your perspective. It's trying to be a good citizen, a good parent, a good friend.
It's also realizing that not everyone has that opportunity to do that.
Amen.
And that's not okay, but it's also okay. It's not this guilt thing. It's how do you get that to be transparent through everything. And that is a struggle. But so again, going back to my closing remarks, the ATF lifestyle is the fact that you're putting this out there, that there is a responsibility from you, Patrick, and everyone involved, that it's not just plugging this lifestyle, but it's relating to the people that will subscribe to the publication, to your internet presence. And the next level is, how do you get the people that want to identify with that weren't a part of it from the beginning? So how do you get those people that go ahead?
You know, for me, it's about celebrating freedom, and this isn't meant to convert people. It isn't meant to brainwash them into believing what I believe. It's just about introducing stories that I think are inspirational American dream stories.
So what I'm going to say to this, I'm going to interject right now, is that you have the opportunity, by what you're doing, not changing a thing, is interjecting into the echo chambers of what's happening in America.
Exactly.
I mean, sliver. It can be a sliver. It's literally someone that does, literally is like ATF Magazine. But I know this person. I know this type of alcohol. I know this. I drink that. I smoke that. I do this. And they grab onto that. I'm not saying you're trying to change the world, but you have a sliver of hope there,
right?
That you aren't just in that echo chamber, that you're promoting a magazine or a lifestyle for people that drink alcohol, smoke tobacco, and own firearms. You have the people like myself, like Ray, like some other people listening tonight, that you have people that they enjoy alcohol, they enjoy tobacco, they enjoy firearms, but they don't do the other things.
Right.
And that would be really fun to follow up on. That you have some testimonials.
Well, we took a long way to get around that tree, but that's exactly the point.
I know. Sometimes it takes a while on this podcast, so But I'll say this, you guys, the closing remarks, everything has been great. Pat, I appreciate it. Don't chug it. You have to have something to cheers to. Did you bail already? Like, Jesus Christ.
He immediately came right back. Go ahead.
Happy Whiskey Wednesday. We're going to post some ATF links. First one comes out this month, right? July. Do you see us? No. So Matt Booth's going to be on the cover of the first episode. We're losing Pat.
Take us home.
The podcast that I was interview on was going to be posted this Friday. And Nate, I know I appreciate you sitting back and listening, but this was right up your alley. ATF. AT is up our alley. The F is more your alley. So I hope to have Pat on and anyone else from ATF Lifestyle Magazine. But I got to tell you, it was great talking to them, and I was able to be interviewed and be able to be honest with them, and it's been a lot of good times with that. So happy Whiskey Wednesday again. One cheers, empty glass,
because we already cheered. So
cigar. Cheers, everyone.